So here's the pitch, okay? We've all seen Myth Swifts. It's that outtake show, and it was running in, and I saw chat spamming when I told Jordan to focus. So we're gonna run with that. Strike while the iron is hot. Jordan sitting at his desk at the video team section. I don't know what they do. I don't care what they do. But for the premise of this video, cannot be focused. Watching anime butts on one screen. I don't care what he's doing. Just can't be working. All right? And then he hears Myth Swifts. Big TV right behind him. Myth Swifts playing. Here's the line. Says Jordan, focus. Okay? And then his eyes go wide. He turns around, turns off the TV. He's trying to get rid of me. He knows he's not focused, but he knows he needs to be. But goes back to his desk, goes back to doing whatever he's doing. But he has to focus. So I'm at his window. Boom, slam on the window. I'm like the Babadook, okay? He doesn't know where I'm coming from. I slam the window, piece of paper, says focus. He does a little bit. He focuses a little bit. He doesn't turn off the anime butts. No. He flips his hat around, Ash Ketchum style. I don't know. And then he goes back to doing anything he wants, but not focusing. That's not enough for me. That's not enough for hi-rez. It's not enough for what we stand for. So I appear behind the wall behind him, okay? Boom, Mifflin, up there. I tell him to tighten up. He needs to focus. He does a little bit more. He focuses a little bit, but not enough, okay? And then it's not enough for me. It's not enough for me, okay? We have to go even further beyond that, all right? He does eventually close the screen, but that's not enough. I'm still appearing. I'm appearing everywhere. I'm in the bathroom. I'm in his cereal. I'm in his snacks. I'm telling him to focus, and eventually he switches desks. I'm under his desk, okay? I'm telling him to focus there, and that's where it happens. He sits in a maxonomic chair, his eyes dilate, and he finally finds his focus.
Okay. Approved.
I sold it? I sold it! Yes! I'm gonna sell so many chairs.
Jordan, what the f was that? We just lived a fever dream. I have no idea what just happened, and we approved it.
What kind of anime butts we talking? What kind of anime butts we talking?
Welcome back to the SMITE Pro League. We just finished off game number 1 between the Camelot Kings and the Solar Scarabs, and now we're about to hop right in to our in-studio match of the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. Before we do, a word and a shout to our sponsors, Maxonomic, for providing such comfortable chairs that you can sit in, use it to tighten up and focus up. You can go to needforseat.com, use code SMITEMAX, get yourself a discount, and get yourself one of those chairs. And believe me, you're going to want to focus, you're going to want to be tightened up, you're going to want to be paying attention, because this next match is sure to be a huge one. Here in studio, one more time, the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons facing off for our second set of the day. I'm joined with Gormizer to get ready to dive into this game.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. The first time that we're going to get to see the Dragons in the studio in a long time. It has been a long while since we've gotten some of those players in there. Of course, the Bolts have had a little bit more experience taking on the Leviathans over there in, Phase 2, a lot of those matchups. So this is going to be a fun one to see how they adapt to being in the studio again.
Again, if you're just now tuning in, you just missed out on a sparks flying match between the Scarabs and the Kings. That ended up 2-1 for the Kings, and now we jump right into the studio for the Bolts and the Dragons. We'll have more in-studio matchups. We'll have tomorrow with Jade Dragons and Atlantis Leviathans. Take a look at the standings to see how everything breaks down after our first game of the second week. We had the Leviathans and the Titans sitting at the very top, and now, unfortunately, after the Scarabs fall, they are down to 6th seed. Camelot Kings now at that 1-1. Both of these teams, however, the ones we're looking at, they're sitting 1-0 each for the Dragons and the Bolts, but only one of them can come out with a 2 at the front end of that slash line.
Yeah, somebody is going to move up to be standing tall with the other two teams at 2-0. The other one's going to tie up the Kings at 1-1. And again, all of these matches matter. You're only playing each of these teams once, so every win is important. Plus, you have to imagine whoever ends up 1st seed and 2nd seed is watching every matchup of yours and knowing who beat you, who caused you trouble, when and where, right? We saw it go back to Phase 1. The Scarabs were the team that knocked the Kings out of the group stage, and so something that could end up happening here and into the playoffs. And so you have to really pay attention to every win.
It's going to be a tight-knit battle here at the top side of play for these two teams. But talking a little bit about the Olympus Bolts, they had a really strong start in phase number 2. They were sitting at 8-0, and then they kind of had a little bit of a falter at the back half of the split, and then they still came back strong, able to get a decent placement going in towards playoffs. But a lot of it coming through here. Barracuda has been showing a lot of prowess in that jungle role, and for good, or not jungle, the hunter role, and for good reasons. He's been around the scene for such a long time. His god pool, so eclectic amount of how many gods he's able to play, just how diverse he is as a player in general.
And honestly, like with the Rise of Artemis, this ROM has been one of my favorite picks as well, but just that's across the league in general. I'm also curious to see, because we were talking about it, we saw a little bit of it, that Uller in set number 1, whether or not that's going to be highly contended. Honestly, I'd give that more to Panda Cat than I think I'd give it to Barracuda, so maybe that's something that we'll have to look at going forward. But I think he has been very, very, as you had said, just grounded. A lot of these highlights have been the ROM, but the Hachiman has come out for them as well, so it's not anything too insane. And like you said, it's just been a really solid performance, and that's been all year.
To be fair, Barrett did put it really wisely in one of the interviews, was just, I want a god where if I'm being chased down consistently, especially like in game 1 where he picks out an Artemis, and then games 2 and 3 we see the ROM, it's just a good god to get him out of danger. It's a great god just for safety. You're being chased down by the front line, press that forward, jump right in the sky.
And I think not just the ROM, but like Hachiman kind of makes sense for that too, right? I'm going to mount up and get on out of there. And that makes it a little more difficult. Like you've got the standard bans, right? Your Artemises and potentially your ROMs, as we saw in the last set, has definitely kind of gone up there. But I think it's open-ended for the Hunter.
Well, talking about Barracuda, we've got him standing by here with Dolson for our pregame interview. So let's start right over to him.
We sure do. Barracuda and I, we're hitting the gym prior to this big match. We got to get the blood flow going, Barracuda.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Well, I'll do this then.
Yeah, no chance that I'm going to continue doing that.
Yeah, my knees were hurting a little.
We went off kilter last time. We're already off kilter this time. Talk to me as a hunter, Barracuda.
I'm a hunter.
As a hunter, talk to me as yourself.
I've killed lots of animals.
Right, in the traditional sense, the natural sense, you're a hunter.
I'm a vegan now, so I wouldn't do that anymore.
Gotcha. But in game, you're also a hunter. Are you loving life right now, given the new jungle meta that's come out?
Oh yeah, I absolutely love getting one shot. You know, figuring out which of their 4 buttons to Aegis is actually my favorite part of playing SMITE right now.
Got it. As far as junglers you've had to play against recently in scrims, have any jumped out to the forefront of?
Are you just asking me to pick some bands right now?
You don't have to tell me anything. I'm wondering, we saw a lot of Hunbats, Tsukiyomis have been more the same from what you've experienced?
All of them.
Anyone in the Assassin tab is fair game?
Well, maybe not like Arachne or like Baka, you know.
Right.
Sorry, Dragons, we're probably not going to pick those.
Got it. Well, that's free for them now.
Yeah.
Unless you now pick it, you could be playing mental...
I could be playing Arachne ADC. I do have a rank 10 Arachne.
Do you?
Yeah, it's very good.
I thought you were about to say I do it in ranked, is what I thought you were about to say, but then you completed your sentence. Final thoughts here from you, Barra. Has the team adapted pretty well, notably Lasbra, to kind of this big change in meta? Do you think No?
No.
All right, going to take a lot of practice to get there. Barracuda, they need some time to warm up to things. We'll see if they can do it up against the Dragons today. I'll let you go get ready, Barra. The desk will take it away.
I'll shoot both.
Maybe hopefully they can get it together for this set.
Then Ernest,
No, we haven't got it ready, and now Lazarus not ready for this. Always a fun time when you have Barracuda on for the interview,
Barra.
no matter who it is. Bye, Barra. Thanks for stopping in. Good luck in your case, man. Just what an honest answer. What a lot of fun from Barra. But let's bring it back in. Let's reach our Zen moment yet again. Let's talk a little bit about the opposite side of the board. Now you got the Jade Dragons, and while Barra likes to play a lot more of the grounded style of play, you're more traditional. Panda Cat's a little bit of the opposite. The Danzaburos, the Ho-Yis have been a lot of gods he's been flexing towards recently.
And I think that's the thing that makes this matchup so much more interesting to me is that they'll both play the meta hunter if you give it to them, but they will absolutely play whatever the hell just finds their fancy that day. I mean, the Danzaburo has looked good, and admittedly, Panda Cat's really the only one who has been able to make it look as consistently good that we've seen throughout the year so far. Also, I had mentioned it earlier, but if someone's going to be picking up Uller, I'd give him the credit to do it maybe a little bit more than what we see out of Barra. It fits his style of play as well, allows him to get aggressive. And alongside that, plus as you had highlighted, like the Ho-Yi that he's been willing to pull out, I think there's a lot more conversations to be had, specifically around the Dragons and what he's going to be able to play. I also do think it's worth mentioning, though, that despite all of these fantastic plays, the only time the Dragons have beat the Bolts this year was at the Phase 1 playoff finals. Otherwise, it has always been a 3-game set, and it has always gone the way of the Bolts. And so we'll have to see if they're going to be able to stack up against those odds this time around. And I think a lot of it will start with the duo lane, or maybe the jungle based on the answer Barra just gave. And so I think Sam and Lasber is a really big matchup for this, just as big as that duo lane is.
Maybe for the sake of my predictions that came through on the waiting room, hopefully the Bolts can keep it going. Because so far I'm 0 for 1. I voted on a Scarab's win, didn't come out. It was a good set nonetheless. I think the only person who had any kind of favor towards the Bolts in this set, just a lot of well-roundedness amongst the majority of this team, a lot of flexibility between their picks. Looking at the kind kind of year to date so far for these guys, the Olympus Bolts have really been favoring a lot of Serket, especially as of recent, and that's also been one of their most winning gods. 17 picks so far this year for Serket on this team. 14 of those have been wins. I got to imagine it's going to be a top pick for these guys going into the drafts.
Yeah, it's something I think that is first off, she's just a big pick in general. Serket has been very, very monumental for supports, but also for those junglers. And for the Bolts, it has been a not necessarily win condition, but it has been extraordinarily helpful, as you had just said, in terms of finding them those dubs. And I think it plays into Lasbra's playstyle no matter the build. That's the thing I think that's really eye-opening, is that she really fits in whether you're building heavy assassin or you're building bruiser. Most of the time you're still going to be building bruiser, but she plays both styles very well.
It's also interesting to note, we talked a little bit about these hunters with Barra and what Panda Cat love to run. Don Zaburo has also been one of the top picks of the Jade Dragons for the entirety of the year. It is tied for their most picked and only one win ahead of their most winning god. So maybe we see some Don Zaburo now with some of the changes to the mace tree. Maybe a little bit of ability damage focused towards him, though the bow build has been working out successfully for him with the crit. But in these picks and bans already, we're seeing a lot of the same stuff that we had seen in previous weeks of play. Khepri and Odin taken away by the Bolts. Hell Artio on the other side for the Dragons.
The Odin's the one that catches my eye the most, but it's only because he's been so devoid of most of the other sets as of lately. I mean, even looking I guess just back to last week. Well, last week he was banned in 9 of the 14 games, so maybe it's not as far-fetched as I thought. He's just not been somebody, at least in that last set and some of these others, that has been as prominent lately. But the Bolts still putting a lot of credence into it. I actually am really excited to see what they first pick, because, well, one, Tiamat's open, but there's just so many good gods right now, it feels like. And me and you have been having this conversation off and on about Raijin versus Tiamat, and I'm not firmly planted on the Raijin side, but I'm standing over there. Like, I definitely drew the line in the sand and said, hey, I'm over here hanging with him in terms of the mid laners that I think are more presiding. But there's also like the Osiris, the Erlang Shin Mifflin had mentioned earlier. This was banned last set, so I guess we're getting a good peek at something.
Am I seeing that? Is that a Chiron first pick?
Yeah.
And a Geb immediately on the other side for the Jade Dragons. Look, I know we just went through a big 8.9 patch, but the fact that Tiamat and Raijin are both open, and then all of these other gods that we were talking about previously, Serket, which has been a big factor for both of these teams, that's still available, but instead the Bolts and the Dragons are already going immediately off kilter. We're seeing Chiron, Geb, Uller as the first 3 gods locked in here in Game 1.
You go back to, what was it, end of Phase 1? Wow, that seems like so long ago, but that's when Chiron, like end of Phase 1 into the beginning of Phase 2, was when Chiron was a massive player. And I will give him credit, Panda Cat, who I think started really pushing that one forward for the rest of the team. Geb was mentioned earlier. I mean, we've already talked about Uller today, so you can go back and listen to those. Geb was mentioned at the very beginning of this desk. And Geb Uller as a combo can do a lot of damage, a lot of control in the duo lane, but Geb is, in my mind, in a similar position as someone as like Ganesh, where you're not really looking at your levels 1 through 5 as like this most impactful, or level 1 through 4. Once you hit 5, that's when your stride really starts to pick up and you can be a little bit more impactful.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, looking through here, this might be the first time that we've seen Kuzenbo locked in by the Olympus Bolts. I don't think we have seen them play this god as of yet this year as a whole. Tying in with those gods we've been seeing a lot of already today, Sylvanas on the opposite side here for the Olympus Bolts. They've locked in their support, so now I can only assume that this Kuzenbo is going to be going over towards the solo lane. Now the Jade Dragons have their 3rd and final pick before we go into the 2nd round of bans. At the moment, they're currently hovering Sol.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't mind this. It's been a very good pick for Herowind all year, and it fits pretty well into their mid lane. The thing that's most interesting to me, and I think that you didn't touch on too heavily, like not just the first Kuzenbo, but the fact that they lock it with a Sylvanas makes it even more, not questionable, but a lot more difficult for them to, I want to say, make it perform the way that we're used to. They've been banning it a lot more recently. They did it against the Warriors when the Warriors were giving them a lot of control and trouble. And so I'm excited to see what they're going to be able to do with this in their hands.
I think maybe the Warriors inspiring a few teams, kind of showing them what Kuzenbo is capable of doing. But usually we've been seeing it from Neil coming from support role. We haven't seen a solo lane Kuzenbo in what feels like eternity at this point. It's probably only been realistically maybe a season's worth of time, but the fact that there's really only 1, maybe 2 players as a whole picking up this god, and now we're seeing him come in the solo lane of all places, is kind of where the real curveball comes from this pick. Jade Dragons, they looked at Sol but instead it's going to be another pick we haven't seen in a while. Morgan Le Fay, but a Scotty ban, a direct shot at Barracuda. Okay, how many games has Barracuda played Scotty? I'm very curious to know. And
like in general or like this year?
Like just this year.
Because I think this year, he's the one Scotty that's been played.
It is probably one game, I think? Maybe one? And throw Ho-Yi in there, because I don't think now.
Nope, sorry, Panda played her.
Okay, Panda played that. And then Ho-Yi is the next ban. Serket and Hunbat's on the opposite side. This draft is all over the place, Gore.
So I keep track of some weird things, obviously. Right. It's part of, I want to say part of my job, but I think it's just who I am.
It's a byproduct of your job.
Yeah, well, it's part of who I am as a human. That is one of the things that I started doing after I noticed, hey, okay, well, we have like 5 gods left that still have yet to be picked this year, was I wonder who's been banned. Like, who has and hasn't been banned. So that is another one off of that ridiculous list that I have no reason to keep. But Scotty, I mean, it must say something about the Bolts. Barra likes Scotty, but so does PandaCat. And I think PandaCat understands a little bit of the matchups and understanding a lot of these buffs. If ability-based hunters are going to come back, Scotty is going to ride with them. Not exactly what I expected to see coming into this, but it does keep me excited.
And a Cthulhu off the tail end of the ban. So we see a Scotty Ho-Yi ban, a Hunbat Serket ban, and then a Cthulhu as a first pick for the Jade Dragons. This draft is all over the place, and not something I would have expected jumping into 8.9 to see all of these guys. Even Morgan Le Fay, I kind of just grazed past that, but Tiamat and Raijin are still available, and they went past both of those, initially looking at Soul, and instead lock a Morgan Le Fay, who we have seen basically none of for the latter half of Phase 2 and jumping in Phase 3, but now taking it here in the top 3.
She jumped in when she got like available for SBL play for like 3 weeks, where she was like highly contested, highly contended, and had a good win rate, at least at the beginning. And then she disappeared heavily, and honestly, for maybe good reason. Again, it's just because those other two you had mentioned, in my eyes, are a little bit stronger. This is actually where things get interesting. I'm willing to think that this Chiron might be mid.
Yeah.
Because this is something that not only have the Bolts really like to do, but it fits out well. That Scylla changes that entirely, so I'm glad I said it before that was locked in, just to make sure I got the 2 cents in. But that is something Vin likes to do, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like that this set.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. You know, the Chiron was locked in as a first pick, but there were 2 Hunter bans by the Jade Dragons in the second half of it, maybe trying to sway this Chiron to be forced towards that duo lane. Instead, it'll be a Scylla and a Set. And a Susano. Okay, so we saw the Susano from Panatom up against the Kings was their way of shutting down the Hell. Where does the Susano fit in this draft? What exactly is he trying to shut down here?
Oh, I mean, he's going to, well, ideally he can chase down the Scylla. That's not easy to do by any means. But I do think he's got a lot of prowess up against Chiron as well. He's just good at sticking to people, and that's the biggest deal. You throw out and get some pressure onto Scylla, she dashes, all of a sudden you teleport to her, and you're still going to be able to chase her down. I think that's a lot of the main goal here, and admittedly necessary. If you remember the last few games Vin played this Scylla, it looked really solid. I think there was one that was kind of overall, but every other performance he had a lot of really good Iron Monsters, good damage as well from his crushes. So I think this is something that is a formidable pick. A lot of not necessarily question marks to the straight up, they're question marks on the Bolts for me. I just want to see how this Kuzenbo is going to perform. We've seen what Sylvanas can provide. I think the Dragon, specifically that Geb, is going to have his work cut out for him, throwing out as many shields as possible.
Not just shields, but the change to his ultimate. That goes live with this patch. Now it deals a base value and deals percent health. So it deals I believe we narrowed down, deals the percent health first, 15% of your current health, and then deals a base value. It got nerfed after the PTS, and now it's only at max rank 630, but I say only 630 plus.
Only 600
and that's
damage. After
he does the 15% of your health on the first portion of that damage. So Geb being as a first pick here, a lot of confidence from the Jade Dragons. I'm just going to say, a lot of out there picks that even knowing that this 8.9 patch is coming, some of these picks I would not just outright expected coming from either of these teams.
I mean, Set and Susano maybe are the ones that caught me the most off guard, but then I look up and I see how many different jungler bans there already were, so it's not as surprising. Plus, Set, especially when Serket has been taken away, has been a very kind pick to the Bolts. And the Susano is something, I mean, we've seen Panatom run it every now and then and has treated them pretty well throughout a lot of this, and I'm not too It's not an exception here for Sam. There we go, trying to figure out what I was going to say. I think it's going to be another good performance, and he's the one I have my eyes on the most this set. He has been having back-and-forth performances throughout this entire year. I think this Susano in this set could be a good way for him to kind of plant his flag and potentially find the first win against the Bolts outside of those playoff finals.
Well, so far, this Scylla does have a 3-win, 1-loss for the Bolts, so this could be a really strong pick for Venenu in the mid lane. We'll see how the Bolts and the Dragons perform in our in-studio matchup here live. Game number 1 between the Bolts and the Dragons. We'll take it over to Dulcin and Mifflin to bring the action.
That's right. It's the SPL match of the week. The Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons battling it out as Dulcin, Miff, and Doug will call the action for you. Fun solo lane matchup here. Kuzumbo up against Final K on the Cthulhu. But Miff, I mean, look, it's the weekend of ability-based characters, it seems like, here between Panda Cat, Barracuda, Lasbra, Sanford Soccer. The old Mace tree is feeling a little bit better nowadays.
It really is, man. Jotun's Wrath gets a cost reduction. Everything else in the Mace tree gets a little bit of additional power added onto it. Panda Cat might actually be going towards the Jotuns inside of that first slot if he is keeping his eye towards those abilities. We know what's catching my eye, Dave.
Tell me.
Meditation. It's selected for both Awesome
Wow.
Jake and Polar Bear Mike here. Both gods that generally benefit from Blink to really make sure that initiation is ringing true, but instead it's just Sustain as the name of the game between these two as of right now. Gotta think that Meditation likely favors the Sylvanas a little bit more. Not only is it pulse HP heal, but it also gives you some more mana, and that means that Wisp is going to be available more often than not.
That plus the new passive on Sylvanas might feel doubly good for Awesome Jake as the game goes on. PBM on a pick that I called earlier on today, Miff. I brought up the Geb. I said, I wonder if we see it. We see it. Mike could fall for first blood, though. Barracuda stunned in place. And that was an important one. Both meds will top off some of the health bars. Mike's still somewhat low here. That'll give Barracuda with full mana the advantage against Panda Cat with next to no mana. And right now, the wave pressure feeling good for the Bolts.
Wait, hold up. How did I glance over this? Is that a bum buzz for Panda Cat as well?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so he's going to have additional clear inside the jungle. Going to afford him a little bit more sustain as far as health and mana is concerned, but how often is he going to be utilizing that if he's been pushed inside of his tower? I'd argue not very often inside of this matchup. I'm very excited to see how that one pans out. Maybe he's just got his eyes towards the starter item completion towards the end of the game and isn't too concerned with what it's capable of doing at this point, but things are different, clearly, in 8.9, man. I wasn't ready for any of that.
Well, good pull on the Panda Cat. PBM made it back to base. Quick transformation and jump on out. We'll keep the Uber on the map. Both supports go med, but both supports go for a different starter item. Benevolence on one side, Sentinel's Gift on the other. Miff, there was a 5-stack Benevolence meta there for a little while. That has gone by the wayside, and we really haven't even seen Benevolence since, except for a support here and there. Lasbro looking for the red buff invade, but at what cost? His first blood that cost. That's a nice bit of escape from Lasbro, but the chase is on now from the Jade Dragons. You have to imagine first blood right around the corner. Can Hurrywin close this gap quick enough? Will Sam for Soccer be the one to grab first blood? Find out this week in game number 1, and Sam for Soccer is the one who picks it up. Some fighting on the left side as well, though. PBM still level 2. This Geb has been punished early and often.
Man, Geb, when he falls behind, it's a story as old as Geb himself. If you're behind this much at this phase of the game, there's really not much you can do about it. Instead, just has to wait till he gets that ultimate available, and even then, generally Geb becomes an engaged bot, right? If you're behind, you just blink in, Cataclysm, say, all right, guys, they're CC'd, try and follow it up with some damage. Not really an option, because he goes for meditation inside of that first slot. So we'll see how PBM decides to play this one out. He's not completely out of it just yet, just now ticking over to level 3 to match up against Awesome Jake, but certainly not a great start for PBM inside of the long lane.
Oh, Venenu is level 5 here. Lasbra's not, though. Sam for Soccer will take over to level 5 after the second kill of the game. Rolls through. Venenu in danger of being collapsed on here and used his teleport out. Oh, no, he didn't. Sent out the Sikkim. The old Sentinel got me all tripped up there. Venenu able to get out in the mid lane, but a great start for the Jade Dragons. The jungle specifically off to a 2-0 start. Hurrywin benefits from both assists. There's always the threat that Susano brings.
Man, Lasra has got to be so tilted at this point. I mean, gets punished for invading the red buff, tries to walk out of base, gets punished for trying to do that around his own back camps, and now finds himself 0-2, but experience tells a different tale. The Olympus Bolts right now have an XP lead as a team, whereas Gold's slightly favoring the Jade Dragons.
Got to be duo lane side of the map, right? I mean, you got Awesome Jake and Barracuda, 2 characters benefiting from a 1-level advantage. Sanford Soccer a little bit ahead. In the mid, though, as well, Venenu has a slight level lead over Hurrywind here, so really mid to left is where the Bolts feel comfortable in the XP department. This jungle, the biggest discrepancy elsewhere for the Jade Dragons. Final K about a half level up over what we saw on Haddix just a moment ago. And so Jotun's Wrath, first item pickup here for Lasbra. And the set myth has just been kept so far behind. That's got to be such a weird inflection point now where Lasbra likes getting aggressive early. We know that he's the type of player to do that. When you find yourself 0-2 in the hole, you probably feel extra pressure to continue farming things up here. Great pull in on a PBM. Will the Geb finally fall? No, the shield will only delay his life for a little bit. Barracuda picks up the first. Panda Cat jumps back in. And in fact, he's in the back line. Typhoon through, and Sanford Soccer will put down Barracuda. Lasbra, though, rotates on in. Will Sanford Soccer be shut down? It's a big route back in the game. Lasbra with the double. And the Olympus Bolts have evened things back up.
Man, Lasbra needed that rotation pretty badly. The Jade Dragons getting slightly over-aggressive here, sticking around inside of the engagement and getting punished for it this time around. The Olympus Bolts, though, and Barracuda in particular, you can tell he is loving this matchup. Just goes into the 2v2 inside the buff, says, all right, man, I don't care who we're CCing, I don't care who needs to get locked down, we're going to put them down from there. And unfortunately for PBM, he was the target of the aggression, doesn't even get the opportunity to use his meditation. No additional sustain ringing true for the Dragons, and now the Olympus Bolts find themselves with both the gold and the experience in the lead.
And what's great for Lasbra, I mean, it's kind of a weird double-edged sword. Sanford Soccer gets his 3rd kill early in that fight to put him on a killing spree, and then Lasbra rotates in, picks up a couple kills, one of them a shutdown kill on the Sanford Soccer. So that helps things out in the jungle just a little bit further. PBM now level 5, and this, remember, was the big change to Geb. It was that level 5, the ultimate, the Cataclysm. The TLDR is that it just straight up does more damage than it used to. You get a big bit of damage, percent health damage, and then a flat amount of base damage on the back end of that. So maybe Myth now at level 5, level 6, we see the Cataclysm for Mike. Maybe it'll make an impact.
Yeah, now Geb Ultimate can actually kill you. Beforehand, it was just percentage of remaining HP. Nowadays, has some base damage inside of the kit. Does not get any scaling, though, from power inside of the build. So PBM just going to get value from the Ultimate as he levels it up. That said, it doesn't scale nearly as highly as it once did either. I believe 35% originally, as Hurrywind loses out on a good deal of his HP there. No ultimate required from Hurrywind to survive this one. So yeah, you're going to apply that HP shred from Geb Ultimate and then apply the base damage afterward, which is huge.
Sam back to mid lane. Venenu quick enough to get out this time. Venenu didn't have his ultimate a second ago. Might have been enough damage to execute Hurrywind with the quick Sick'em Crush I'm a Monster combo. But does not matter. We didn't see it roll on out as PBM rolls on out to the left side of the map. Sam has just been so active here in this game, Myth. I mean, the Susano just so mobile and so good at kind of spreading discourse around the map. Lasbra's hanging out on left. This is something I wanted to see when we added this kind of nook on the left side of the map, was a sneaky rotation through the lane onto the left. You don't often see ganks happening on this side, but with the pressure the way it is, Myth, might be hard to get PBM and Panda Cat out in the middle of the lane.
Lasbra has spent so much time hovering here.
Still here.
He essentially has to get the kill. I mean, if the Jade Dragons know he's there, I haven't seen any indication of it, but they're not stepping up whatsoever.
Yeah,
Lasbra, what's it been, like 45 seconds now? He's just springing the trap.
You gotta get the jump out of Panda Cat, and Lasbra's got to be able to collapse in on that. Panda Cat jumps away. Lasbra in to close the gap. Stun connects on the backside. Lasbra will survive, and a little bit of healing from Awesome Jake will keep the set on the map twofold. Sanford Soccer rotating in, has Blink. Looks like Lasbra's going to be able to get out. He had to get the kill there with the amount of time that he spent on the left.
Panda Cat's got to be frustrated, man. I mean, you've got no idea that he's there. There's no wards on that side. You don't often see ganks coming from over there either.
Right?
I mean, just about never. And, well, that's unfortunate for Panda Cat. PBM heads back to base, and Lasbra springs the trap, immediately going to the tower with his ultimate, setting up for the Centaurus from Barracuda, and Panda Cat now is looking to start stacking that Transcendence, but it's going to be slow. Already falling down 0-2, goes for the second slot stacking, which means that you're only slowing down your build even further. This Ull is going to need some help.
Man, with the way Barracuda was talking in that pregame interview, I figured the Bolts were going to come out and look like trash up against the Dragon. No, we haven't adapted at all. And he was very earnest about it. You know, always a guy to make some jokes, but wouldn't have been surprised if there's some maybe scrims have been tough. You know, it's a big meta change. Lasbra, maybe the one affected most by it. This is a Bolts team that had their feet underneath them with the existing jungle meta, and Lasbra making a good impact for this team, so would not have been surprising had it taken a little bit of time for the Bolts to wind up. At least in the early game, in game 1 of the new update, the Olympus Bolts have looked okay. Sanford Soccer knew Lasbra was there, and before my eyes, he is missing. Sanford Soccer deletes Lasbra from the map. Now all 4 kills of the Dragons with the Susano.
Haddix makes the rotation over to see if maybe he can help out inside of the fight, but Lasbra legitimately was just deleted from the game. He didn't really have an interaction point whatsoever inside of that fight, was not allowed to touch the ground, and the Jade Dragons coming out ahead of this engagement now. 4-4 in the slash line. Gold largely equalized, but what can you do with this timer with Lasbra dead? At least invade some back camps. That's exactly what Sam's looking at.
Yeah, at least a 1-level lead for Sanford Soccer. Now a 2-level lead as I speak. Nearly a pull onto Hurrywin, who will go on back to base. Pyromancer looked at. Sanford Soccer far enough ahead, you think, to maybe feel comfortable about a fight. He's got himself the Crusher and the Brawler's Beat Stick, so great start in the build for the Susano. Hurrywin on the Morgan Le Fay myth. This is an interesting pick. I mean, she was right up there with Tiamat for a while. It was Tiamat, Morgan Le Fay. 1-2 punch in all of the pick ban phase. It's been Raijin, Tiamat more often than not, and even if it's not Raijin and Tiamat, it feels like we've seen a whole slew of other picks before this Morgan Le Fay has been prioritized.
Yeah, it just felt like a lot of people thought that Morgan Le Fay's damage output is a little bit too conditional. How often are you able to close the gap, get in melee range, use that Dragonflight, and then immediately chain CC into the rest of your kit? I'd argue pretty often in this matchup, specifically the Olympus Bolts, both Set and Kuzenbo are going to be trying to jam it down onto Hurrywin. Pretty easy for him to just pop Dragonflight and walk away. It is unreactable. CC, still true, just haven't had a chance to say it for a little while because he's fallen off the popularity charts.
Yeah, look, it reset the timer, right? I mean, it's, you know, it was 0 days since last unreactable CC from Mifflin. And then we never saw Morgan Le Fay, so it started to build up a little bit. Now we've reset the timer back down to 0. But the point does still stand. It's something that Hurrywin will have to, not only will want to, but have to take advantage of if Lasbra, if Haddix, even Awesome Jake, Barracuda maybe, depending on where the old Gallop finds its way. Hurrywin's going to have to use every ounce of that kit to keep himself safe. Looked at is the Gold Fury by Barracuda and Awesome Jake. Venenu's here. You got great secure on the objectives thanks to this Scylla. I'm a Monster. Could make quick work of this. Crushes down Venenu in the I'm a Monster, and the Jade Dragons steal it away underneath the nose of Venenu, and they get a kill. Panicat snags one onto Awesome Jake. That is horrible outcome from the Gold Fury for the Bolts.
I mean, that's not a coin toss. You've got such a confirmed advantage on the side of the Bolts with I'm a Monster and Crush already set up. Crush going to be shredding defense of anyone within its range, and I'm a Monster, the hardest hitting ability on the map right now, that the Jade Dragons legitimately just steal that one away. I mean, they get pyro. So crazy. The gold now starting to balloon a little bit out of control, 2,000, 2,500 in favor of the Jade Dragons. Experience around that same range as well, and they could have very easily just been the Olympus Bolts walking away with it. Instead, it's the Chaos team.
If I remember, I mean, there was a Crush down.
Yes.
And an I'm a Monster ready to roll.
Yeah, they should have got it.
I mean, you're miscalculating that by, I mean, a tiny bit of damage. We'll get a look back at exactly what happened. Crush is down. I'm a Monster's down.
That can't be happening.
I mean, there was a sliver of HP after the Crush was detonated and the I'm a Monster went off. And it just wasn't enough?
Look, Ven tries his absolute best to do the maximum amount of damage possible. He says, all right, if I'm a Monster hits for 600 at this point, I'm going to pop it at 600. But you have to realize, in situations like that, you've got a pretty large window of damage that you can go towards. I don't think anyone on the Jade Dragons is hitting that for upwards of like
600,
400, right? Like, I think their max damage is likely 300 from a first ability from Morgan Le Fay, which means that you can hold on to I'm a Monster for a much longer time. You don't have to do it frame perfect, pixel perfect on the HP bar. Instead, this is what happens when you mess that up. You miss it by a pixel, it's going to get picked up by the opposition.
Right, it's a small miss from Venenu that has a big impact on the game. Fino K getting whittled down. There's actually a lot of damage finding its way onto this Cthulhu. Look at the damage that Fino K is returning. Lasbra will do his best to chase down Fino, and the tower dive works out. Lasbra back on the board. 4 kills for both junglers. One of them's got 3 deaths, though, and it's Sam for Soccer that has dealt a lot of that to Lasbra. Could be a great opportunity here for Sam, looking to Venenu. Instead, we'll pick up the red buff. The early bubble for Sam for Soccer will help him run down picks just like this. Forces out I'm a Monster from Venenu. Walk away, but does a good bit of damage to Hurrywind on the back end.
Awesome Jake might have the flank here early. Beats Hurrywind to avoid the knockup. Should spell the end of it.
Nope.
Pull, no good. Jade Dragon's just going to walk away from this one.
And that was a good bit of initiation there from Sam. Venenu does well with his I'm a Monster that time to keep Hurrywind in that threat range. Awesome Jake throws everything out of the window there and nearly connects with the pull. Hurrywind loses his beads in the meantime, though. Pretty hefty loss, I would say. The Morgan Le Fay somewhat immobile. If Awesome Jake, Haddix, Lasbra, Venenu find some of that CC under Hurrywind in the next 125 seconds or so, the Morgan Le Fay will have to throw everything out as well to stay alive. So Miff, you kind of look at the pacing of this game. Sam for Soccer got off to a great start, still on a good start at 4-1, only fell once to Lasbra. Lasbra's also picked things up. When the set was 0-2,
things were looking tough.
Things were looking tough, but he's bounced back.
He has. I mean, Lasbra has got that early rotation over towards the purple buff to pick himself up. A couple of kills really was required for him to find himself in a position where he could play proactively on the map, and now I'd argue he's done so pretty well. But if we're talking about jungle presence, it's been Sam for Soccer through and through throughout the entirety of this game. 4-1-0 on this Susano, now looking to go towards a little bit more burst inside of the build, potentially Heartseeker as the selection here. I mean, he's got one-shot potential.
Barracuda is just going to get jumped on, but Lasbra was here to help out his ADC. Sam for Soccer will complete the kill, and no res chance for Barracuda. Lasbra was there, but so was Sam, and right now this Susano is just looking more threatening. So Barracuda falls for the second time this game, and that's a big opening now for PandaCat. The KDAs look very similar between both of these hunters, but PandaCat now has the ability to get back on the map a little bit quicker and build up some of that farm.
Take a peek at the relic selection from PBM here. I thought, again, that it would have likely have been the Blink just so they can get involved inside of these team fights. Instead, he says, look, engage isn't an issue. Doesn't even necessarily need to be me. Fine, okay, can engage the fights with a Descent into Madness, Sam for Soccer with a Blink pull. So instead, I've got my eyes on the team fight proper Onk selection very early on here from PBM. And Awesome Jake, being Sylvanas, can't be choosy with his heals. If he wants to apply it, he's applying it to everyone in a massive range around him, and whoever is benefiting from that heal is now going to be taking additional damage inside of these team fights, so long as PBM is able to connect that relic.
You could argue similar ultimates between PBM and Awesome Jake. One's a knock-up, one's a stun, but I don't think very arguable between the two which one is going to be doing more damage. Jake goes back to base. Wonder what he will pick up as his second relic. It is the Magic Shell. So Shell plus Med. It seems like keeping his teammates alive is on the mind of Awesome Jake here with his relic choices. Fury is back up. Primal this time.
Good Lord.
Why wouldn't Sam for Soccer take this opportunity?
What?
Barracuda has to gallop away, but Sam for Soccer able to get back in. Barracuda uses his ultimate. Haddix rotates through, finds the first kill of the fight, but watch out. Big ol' Cthulhu right down Main Street. And is chasing down all of the Olympus bullets. PandaCat's got
shield
Haddix dead in his face, but Venenu's able to turn one around as well. This fight far from clean. Haddix will not get the kill on the PandaCat, not just yet. Stuns through, killing spree for the Hooler.
PandaCat almost killed himself on the reflect. Jake trying to finish up the job, misses
nice
the
dodge.
pull. Maybe the life steal has to stick around. Nice shield.
Big shield from PBM, and it's a double kill for PandaCat from like 100 HP. The play was perfect from the Jade Dragon's Hunter. All but one have died, and it's Venenu left walking away. Fine, okay, huge in that fight. The rest of the Jade Dragons step up as well. Venenu could get chased down here. Crush will apply the slow. If nothing else, Miff, we got a Fury taken down by the Dragons as well as 4 kills.
That whole fight starts off great for the Dragons when Sam for Soccer is able to isolate Barracuda, force out the Gallop, and then also force the Centaurus ultimate. Unfortunately for him, not quite able to secure the kill himself. Luckily, the rest of the Dragons were there and ready to follow up on that engage. The Olympus Bolts do a very good job of shutting down the initial engagement from the Jade Dragons, as reflected in the kills. Sam for Soccer, one of the only 2 to fall on that side, but it was not enough. There was a concentrated effort of multiple members on the Bolts to try and finish off PandaCat, and my man was dancing inside of their backline. He could do no wrong inside of the fight and walks out alive thanks to, I think 3 shields from PBM. This gap is so annoying.
Looks like it. PandaCat full on to the ability-based build here on the Uller, and he's 3 levels ahead of Barracuda is Panda Cat. And so, you know, this Chiron has been kind of sat on from the early game. Sanford Soccer's made his way over to that side of the map. Now doesn't have Aegis for a full minute. Beads are there. But the pregame interview, Miff, kind of has a point here from Barracuda. He's thinking, yeah, it's great getting to choose which one of the 4 abilities from the enemy jungler is going to be the one that kills me. And it's been a lot of them from Sam for Soccer here. 5 kills for Sam. Couple of them landing onto Barracuda, stripping away those actives as well. Hasn't been much of an answer for this Susano.
No, it's got to be CC lockdown. Once Susano engages, you have to stop him. He shouldn't be allowed to cast his ultimate before he's eaten like 3 or 4 CC abilities from the Olympus bolts, but that's exactly what he's done every single one of these engagements. Luckily for the bolts, Gold Fury no longer on the map, Pyromancer no longer on the map, and Fire Giant is still slightly out of range of the Jade Dragons to just go ahead and walk in. It's about a 6,000 actually gold deficit at this point, but the Olympus bolts this late in are still capable of fighting, and the Jade Dragons are respecting that. Normally, when you see a lead this large, you just immediately walk in towards the Fire Giant itself, but they have to put respect, the Jade Dragons that is, on the confirmation potential that Venenu has. I mean, it's going to be a coin toss on the Fire Giant unless the Dragons are able to shut down this Scylla first.
And we haven't seen much really from either mid lane, have we, Miff? Both of them about dead even as far as damage goes. Both of them similar in their builds. Venenu actually has a 1-level lead. Got Flat Pen early, Soul Reaver into Obshard for Ven. So once the Obshard is fully completed, he'll really be swinging. We just haven't seen the opportunity yet from Venenu. The Scylla has just not had the space to operate. You could argue similar things for Hurriwind, who's a bit lower on the damage charts as well. Fine, okay. Putting a little bit of damage down right in the split of this jungle. Sanford Soccer's on the right side of this fight. And so whichever of the 2 carries of the Olympus bolts kind of trends in that direction is going to be under threat from Sanford Soccer. It looks like both teams pulling away for just a moment though, Miff. And you look at the ward coverage for the bolts, there's that 1 lone ward on the backside of the Fire Giant pit that'll let you know that the Dragons have backed away. Yeah, Sanford Soccer is forced to step away as the Olympus bolts wave actually pushes up towards him, shows him on the map, and he gets spotted out immediately as indicated by the Olympus bolts pings. Jade Dragons, privy to that, go ahead and cede their positioning, considering that Lasbra was unaccounted for inside of that fight, was hovering just around that left-hand side towards mid, but nobody on the Dragons knew exactly where he was, so they give up a little bit of that positioning. And again, that goes to show how much respect the Jade Dragons are putting on Ven in particular right now. If this Scylla dies at any point and it's a clean pick for the Jade Dragons, expect them to immediately gun down this Fire Giant. Instead, they have to play it a little bit slower, generate threat, and force the Olympus bolts to walk in. Dragons not a team that love playing slow, though. The Fire Giant started up here. The Olympus bolts will call them on it. Haddock's close by. Thorns ready to go on this Kuzumbo. Fine, okay. Gets his bubble popped. So 1 bit of CC immunity now missing for the next 30 or so, or for the next minute or so, rather, from this Cthulhu. Fire Giant, soft reset, still down. Beneath half HP, Lasbra spotted out by a ward here. Haddock somewhat low for what you'd like on your frontliner to start off one of these fights. You could say the same for Awesome Jake. Polar Bear Mike, that's where my eyes go. I want to see that ultimate get some chunk damage onto the Olympus bolts if he's able to find it. Maybe onto Lasbra, who he's matching. Fire Giant's been fully reset, though. The Olympus bolts have done enough by showing up. The longer this fight goes on, the more it's going to favor the bolts. Already, PDM dropped to just above 50% HP, roughly around 75%, just by pulling the Fire Giant itself. But that's a great start for the Jade Dragons to try and find some aggression. Yeah, look, Ven, you can't be losing 50% over the wall. Now the Jade Dragons just going to continue generating threat. Wow, Panda Cat with 1 ability loses, or he takes away half of Venenu's health bar. Haddock's taken down a little bit low here as well. Venenu attempts to crush over the wall. Doesn't hit onto Panda Cat. Lasbra's been working on the right here. And you're kind of playing with fire in a moment like that. If the Jade Dragons know where you are and they kind of, at the drop of a hat, decide to turn, look at you, and jump on you, they'll catch you as off guard as you are attempting to catch them. But the Fire Giant reset once more here, Mifflin. There is a Gold Fury standing. I don't think the Olympus bolts are, I don't know if they have the luxury of rotating all the way to the left with the threat of the FG here on right. No, I think you're absolutely right. When you're this far behind, you have to be ready to defend the Fire Giant at a moment's notice. So it's going to be a little while until the bolts can walk themselves all the way over to the left-hand side. But I may have misread the situation. I thought Ven was the one who was generating the most
power for the Olympus Bolts in these elongated fights because the Jade Dragons have to be concerned about the potential of a steal. I think it's actually awesome, Jake, man. These heals are really a thorn in the Jade Dragon side. They've got a great poke composition, the Dragons that is, between the Uller and the Morgan Le Fay. Just damage over the wall, incredibly strong. Doesn't matter, though. Awesome Jake's always there with the Wisps or the Meditation just to keep his team topped off.
Yeah, not much anti-heal on the other side when you get a Brawlers for both Sanford Soccer and Panicat. Divine Ruin, I'll stand corrected as I'm scanning the items. There is a little bit. Crushes down, and that'll give the Pyromancer over to the Olympus Bolts. So in correcting myself, there is a little bit of anti-heal that'll help out with some of that, but finding it, allowing it to stick to the targets that you want it to around these jungle walls, tough to do. Haddox on the Kuzenbo, 1, 1, and 2, has matched the output of Final K up to this point, a few thousand damage behind, but eyeing similar things here. Voidstone might help out a little bit. We've seen Kuzenbo's melt down some targets here, Myth, and the way the build has gone for Haddox. Good chance to do so, but it's all about finding that target, right? I mean, he's got a lot to work through. You got to go through Final K, go through PBM in order to get to Hurrywind and Pandacat.
And honestly, once he gets to Pandacat, Haddox that is, he's probably getting shredded. Worth noting, Ghoul gets a buff as a god, now has 30% attack speed at all times, benefiting from that passive on his ultimate, and 30% lifesteal inside of the axe stance as well. But take a peek at the build. I mean, sure, it's ability based, but outside of that, it is a ton of penetration, flat percentage or otherwise. So whoever he's closing gap on, whoever's trying to shut down Pandacat inside the back is going to get shredded. Like paper, honestly. I mean, even Haddox is going to show a fair bit of respect. Worth noting, though, Pandacat has no lifesteal inside of the build itself. So if he is fighting Haddox, he's likely going to have to play inside of that axe stance or just lose out to the reflect damage of Kuzenbo.
Going to need the med from PBM to hit its mark there, if that mark ends up being Pandacat. Pull from Awesome Jake, no good. PBM rolls through. It's a 3-level difference in support. And the Jade Dragons have had enough of standing around. They're going to start up the Fire Giant. Haddox and Awesome Jake try to funnel through this kind of small corridor here. And there's just a lot of poke damage being returned onto him. Lasbra on the left side this time of the fight. You have to imagine the Jade Dragons have some idea what direction Lasbra is going now. Could find Sanford Soccer, but I'm not sure that's a fight Lasbra wants to take. And once again, Fire Giant getting reset here, Myth. In the time that things have started up, been reset, started up, been reset. Everyone in the game has reached level 20. Still a 3-level difference in support, and that's big, that's important. But all the other 4 roles have caught up in XP for the Bolts.
Effectively right now, Awesome Jake legitimately much tankier than PBM inside of the fight. PBM, though, has the effective HP of his shield, as well as just having the rest of his team have a pretty sizable lead around him, so can play a little bit more aggressive inside of these engagements. I'm really excited to see which one of these two squads is really going to step up to the Fire Giant. Keep your eyes on the left-hand side. Lasbra thought about clearing out that wave, but had he shown himself, would have opened up the door for exactly this. Fire Giant pulled anyway.
That's right. Lasbra's going to have to get back from base. He's got to do it quickly. I don't know if Lasbra has
30.
the speed
That's
to
the
get
confirm.
to the FG. Ultimate goes out and catches on to Venenu.
What?
The Bolt? What are you kidding me? The Bolt's stealing away. What in the world goes wrong? The Jade Dragon started. Centaurus from Barra. Say his name, baby. Barracuda steals it away. Awesome Jake stunned in place. The Jade Dragons will at least get one.
Fire Giant on 4 members, but they lose out on Awesome Jake for 40 seconds. The Jade Dragon still healthy, but it was expensive. A lot of resources used to find that kill into Sylvanas, so maybe they don't stick around for the Phoenix itself. Olympus Bolts from the brink prove that the Jade Dragons were right in showing that much respect. The steal potential is ridiculous. There isn't great confirmation on the side of the Dragons, and it's reflected here. Now the Bolts effectively by themselves like another 5-6 minutes in this game.
Oh, the Bolts stole away an objective. It's Venenu, right? For sure, it's
Surely.
Venenu. No, we're on board with Barracuda.
He's so far.
My goodness, I missed it. I will completely admit that I'm looking at Venenu. I'm expecting him to walk up. I'm expecting I'm a monster to come over the wall. It gets stolen away, but Venenu's running the other direction. I have no idea where that comes from, and it's Barracuda letting Centaurus fly. And that'll keep the Bolts alive in this game. You imagine, yeah, gold still probably in the negatives based on what happened after the fact. But delaying is the important thing here. The game is not getting worse just yet. The Jade Dragons have been stalled.
No, that is great for the Olympus Bolts now, who can actually go farming again. They don't have to hover around the Fire Giant for 5 actual minutes, and instead can either try and get aggressive themselves, at least on these tier 1 towers, which seems to be the call, as they legitimately aren't that far behind inside of builds as of right now, despite being down a fair bit of gold. Fire Giant I like to equate to about 10,000, so likely going to have a slight favor towards the Olympus Bolts inside of this next team fight. But take a peek at the itemization from Final K here, actually going towards Sovereignty in that last slot, trying to make up for the fact that PBM has elected to go for slightly more selfish build for the support. I like what we're seeing from the Jade Dragons. Now Final K kind of baton passing with PBM saying, all right, I'm going to be the sole initiator, fight around me, you're going to be a little bit tankier.
Myth, the script has been flipped a bit here for the last, I don't know, 15 minutes of this game. The Jade Dragons have been pushing on the Olympus Bolt side of the map, and the Bolts have just never given up. Barracuda gets a miracle steal on the FG, and now it's the Bolts who are doing the pushing. They have knocked down a tower on left, looking towards one more. Phoenix on right is going to get threatened eventually by the minions, but they're normal old minions, so you don't expect that one to fall for free anytime soon. Jade Dragons, though, they don't want to give up this tier 2 tower for free, Myth. They are grouping up. Same for Soccer lurking around to the right, so the Olympus Bolts know that Susano is missing. There's kind of only one avenue to go, and it's around the back side, unless Sam kind of runs things right up the middle here. But a soft defense kind of firming up even around this tier 2 tower.
Watch how Lazra positions. Normally when you're on a Fire Giant siege, you want your jungler playing a little bit more aggressively on the Jade Dragon side of the map, but instead Lazra realizes, okay, it's more than likely that Sanford Soccer is going to bring slightly more value to this team fight than I will, considering he's got AoE from the Typhoon as well as one-shot potential on the carries. So Lazra hovers very close to his team inside of the jungle, just acting as goaltender, making sure that Susano can't engage, but you didn't go deep enough, and look where Sam is.
Primal Fury is so awkward. Primal Fury ends up getting taken down by the Dragons. The Bolts did not want to stick around any further. Final K has caught the carries in the back line. I'm a monster! Decimates the health bar of Panic Cat. Barracuda nearly gets the execute yet again, but look at the confidence Benenu's got now. He's waltzing forward with Haddix and the rest of the team at his back.
Now Final K just trying to generate some space for his squad. The Jade Dragons, though, maybe don't realize how strong this chase is from the Bolts. Haddix going through the lane, Ven through the jungle, and Lazra right behind him.
Nobody's got ultimates here outside of the transformation for Panic Cat. Bede's still
We're
there
back
for the Uller. We're right back to the tier 2 tower. Fire Giant buff is falling off of everyone, and the Jade Dragons with their recalls will tell you all you need to know. We're headed back to base. The tier 2 is going to go down. Still at like an 8,000 gold lead are the Jade Dragons. But in a minute's time, the next Fire Giant will be up, and the Olympus Bolts might be feeling more confident around this one.
So 5 minutes ago, the Olympus Bolts were able to strip away a Fire Giant, but afterwards, the power play, although netting them a fair bit of gold, still leaves them exactly where they started. This time, though, it will be an enhanced Fire Giant. The Jade Dragons, roughly 8,000 gold in the lead, should be the aggressors yet again. Look at this positioning that they're establishing early on, trying to find that ward coverage deep on the Olympus Bolts side of the map. If anyone steps up too far, I mean, Jade Dragons have complete vision dominance.
Yeah. Kind of scanning the horizon here. You got to look where are the Bolts wards. That's the important thing to look at here. They're kind of shallow on their side of the jungle. The Jade Dragons able to get some deep wards on the Bolt side of the jungle. So you're going to have a good idea if you're the Dragons of the pathing of the Bolts here. And where Venenu, Lazbra maybe specifically, is starting to rotate. There's kind of an ebb and flow to this. The Bolts now can maybe step up a little bit further, get some ward coverage down for themselves. There's an important one right there in front of the FG. Might end up getting cleared out. For the time being, though, the Dragons know right where the Bolts are.
They do, and the last Fire Giant skirmish, and I think that's the right way to word it considering how long it went, I think it is a byproduct of the caution that we're seeing from the Jade Dragons up against this healing composition of the Olympus Bolts, namely Sylvanas on Awesome Jake. You can't utilize this poke style that the Dragons are trying to. It's been a lot of Panic Hat tossing hail of arrows over the wall, or Hurrywin trying to use that sigil mastery, just trying to find that poke and create some space. That's not working at this point. If the Jade Dragons want to win a fight, it's off that initial engagement and it's off that Onk cooldown. Keep your eyes on PBM. He is huge.
Good pull onto that huge target. Not ideally what you want. Haddix gets taken down pretty low here, but remember, this is where the sustain is going to be all that important. Watch that health bar start to fill back up here over time. This one's enhanced. This Fire Giant's enhanced, and one way or another has a chance of ending the game. Exposed Phoenix on right against the Bolts, exposed Phoenix on left against the Jade Dragons. Both teams have their immediate end possibility, their immediate game win, if you're able to cleanly secure this Fire Giant for yourself. Jade Dragon still taking that aggressive positioning here. Final K is going to be important to follow along with as well. That Sovereignty needs to do some work for the rest of his team. Fire Giant, I say started, but it's kind of a hesitant start here from the Jade Dragons, just seeing the reply of the Bolts.
And the Bolts are showing some face. Haddix and Awesome Jake acting as the front line for their team right now, just making sure that the Jade Dragons aren't legitimately committing, dropping it down to just over 50% are the Jade Dragons, and they realize we're not going to let it happen again, man. We got to take the fight first. We can't leave it up to that coin toss and reset the Fire Giant all the way back to full. But this is exactly what I was concerned about. The Jade Dragons showing this trepidation around the neutral objective are allowing the Bolts to stall out this game. I mean, the healing from Awesome Jake is nearly unstoppable. I mean, my man's got plenty of MP5. He's not worried about going He could just keep topping off either himself or Haddix and have them play an annoying role.
Right, and it's moments like this you got to look at waves. What direction are we pushing here? What objectives are under threat? Tier 2 on left of the Bolts over time might get taken down a wave, pushed up pretty far there. You can say the same about Tier 2 in mid. But no Phoenixes really feeling under pressure for either team. Both teams may be okay with hanging out and doing this dance just a little bit longer. Venenu with some aggressive positioning here. He's around the corner. It's risky. If anyone from the Jade Dragon steps forward, Venenu could delete them, but could simultaneously be deleted just as quickly. Carol's coin late in the build here for Venenu. Can that percent pin do some work? Yes, it can. PBM's health bar nearly entirely gone. Venenu has to leave, though. Lots of damage from Sanford Soccer. Found its way onto the mid laner. Lasbra lurking over to the right. PBM, Hurrywin, Panda Cat, all low. Final K, plenty healthy. He'll dash in here, but he is all alone. Can you get the kill onto Ven? No, Ven will transport himself out. Lasbra still alone in the back. He has to use the Aegis, but he will end up going down. Hurrywin picks up the first around the FG.
And Final K still generating so much space. Might get caught out here. If he gets CC'd, could lose his life. But the Fire Giant, it's burning fast. Haddix, the only one far enough forward. He's low HP.
Fire Giant is low here. Haddix, Awesome Jake, Venenu,
Barracuda,
Barracuda, they're the only ones close, but there's no ultimates to steal, and the Jade Dragons find enough space to take the enhanced Fire Giant. Haddix now looked at as well. Final K will send the route towards Venenu, Barracuda, and Awesome Jake. Haddix blinks away here, and it looks like the Bolts will be able to scurry back to their base. They're going to have to defend against all 5 with enhanced Fire Giant.
Awesome Jake hasn't backed, and neither has Haddix. They're so low HP. This Phoenix is going down absolutely for free. Worth noting, though, watch Panda Cat's mana. He's just about
Haddix had to go back to base here. Panda Cat sends the last bit of damage to the right side Phoenix, and 36 minutes in, a Phoenix has been broken, and the Jade Dragons happy with what they've got. They'll head back, they'll reset, and now it's the Bolts on defense.
Enhanced Fire Giant, 10,000 gold in the lead, but gold means a lot less now than it did 16 minutes ago. The majority of players in the match already approaching that true 6-item slot. The majority of relics already ticked over towards that tier 3. But man, this game is on a nice edge still. Take a peek at the relics, Dave. I mean, just about none available to either squad. Beads are up for Ven. That's pretty huge. Both defensive relics for Barracuda also available, but for 20 seconds, Panda Cat not going to be playing with either one of his. Only really the beads available to Sanford Soccer, and PBM still has his team fight relics. So it makes sense to me that the Jade Dragons are going to take this a little bit slower. Don't want to just try and push into the Titan room, and instead clear out these tier 2 towers, remove some of that defense, some of that kind of HP scaling on the Titan, and set yourselves up for a much easier time once you do decide to start stepping in.
Man, Final K has done a lot of work here this game. Oni Fury, are we fighting over the Oni Fury? The Bolts steal away, but what's the cost? Venenu trying to get out with the top damage in the game. That's a Cthulhu chasing him down. PBM deletes Haddix elsewhere. Lasbra falls as well. Final K chasing down the carries.
Wow.
And I'll breathe for a moment. Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. Here's the issue, though, Miff. As we take a pause here, it's solo lane and jungle down for the Olympus Bolt. It's Final K chasing down the 10% HP Venenu.
No dash, no ult.
And we're fighting for an Oni Fury. You steal it away, but what's the cost?
Yeah, I can't believe that the Olympus Bolts decide to dig their heels in there, right? Like, sure, tier 2 tower, if you want to put up a soft defense, buy some time, just strip away some of that Fire Giant timer to get ready to defend your Phoenixes, that makes sense to me. Taking a fight that deep in neutral territory, 10,000 gold down, enhanced Fire Giant on 5, I can't justify that in my mind.
Yeah,
it does not make a lot of sense.
That's a tough call. Appreciate the patience, everyone. We will go back into game. Venenu did survive. Haddix and Lasbra on a 1-minute timer. So it's going to be the 3 last members of the Bolts trying to get it done. No ult for Venenu. big confirmable damage now missing. Barracuda halfway to his ultimate. And the Jade Dragons might be able just to walk this one down mid.
40 seconds left on the nearest respawn, but that's so much time to work with that I think the Jade Dragons make the right call in stripping away this tier 2 tower. They can go for the Phoenix, and it still will likely be another 20 seconds left on the Bolt's allies to come back up. Jade Dragons playing with house money at this point.
Venenu's got to go big alongside Barracuda. I mean, a frontliner and 2 carries, maybe that's what you want defending your Titan, but the Jade Dragons, they can walk in, they can ignore a couple members of the Bolts here. The Bolts just have to do more damage. Panicat is taking a lot, crushes down, and crushes misses target, shielding across all of the Jade Dragons. Awesome Jake taking low, but the Titans lower. Game 1 to the Dragons.
But it was not easy, was it, Dave? The Olympus Bulls forced them to earn this one. Gold Fury steals, Fire Giant steals, back and forth engagements. I mean, if the Olympus Bolts were able to do just a little bit more with their own Fire Giant, had they not gone towards that Gold Fury, this game likely still going on. This game could have turned around, but instead the Jade Dragons come out ahead this time around.
I mean, Sanford Soccer runs things in the early game here.
100%.
I don't think the KDA, Fine OK, really did justice how impactful that Cthulhu was. I mean, he might have eclipsed 30,000 damage by the end of that game, and I don't think anyone else was particularly close. I think the Jade Dragons, they step up when it counts. The Bolts make things interesting. The set far from over, but the Jade Dragons and particularly Fine OK step up big here in Game 1. Game number 2 of Bolts versus Dragons coming up next.
Gotta take off my jacket for this one. Oh, dude, this. No, I know he was supposed to take you out last weekend, but he got busy.
Welcome back to the desk, getting ready to jump into game number 2. And if you haven't picked up any of your SPL merchandise, well, don't worry, we've got even more available to you now. If you go to shop.smiteproleague.com, you can pick up our new line of Team Athletic joggers. They've got the team logo, so you can represent any of the teams that you want to grab with one of those pairs of joggers. And we've also got team-specific mouse pads. So if you didn't get your chance to get the SPL Bologna mouse pad, well, now you can get a mouse pad to represent your favorite teams. We got one for all 8 teams, whether that be the joggers or the mouse pads, over at SmiteProLeague.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Insight Apparel, for bringing us all of that love. That Jade Dragons one's actually really nice.
That's a nice mouse pad.
Like, that Bolts one was good. We saw the Kings one earlier and the Scarabs. Like, those looked really good. But, man, that Dragons one actually does look really nice. And it might look even nicer here, tied with that first game win the Dragons were able to bring. Back and forth action across the board. You never knew where everything was going to fall in place, because first it was a Gold Fury steal by the Dragons, and then it was a Fire Giant steal by the Bolts, and then it was another objective steal, I think that one by the Dragons over at another Gold Fury. So basically it came down to whoever started an objective wasn't going to get that objective.
And not only that, but it was just all back and forth. I think a lot of control for the Dragons, and you could see it a little more consistently throughout all of this. Honestly, and we'll watch it when it happens, but if the Bolts didn't get that Fire Giant, this game ends much quicker in favor of the Dragons. A lot of it is leaning in their direction. A lot of really good kills. Sam has a nuts early game. At one point, I think he was like 4-1 and was really a hefty hand in terms of all of their kills. PandaCat just got to do PandaCat things, man. It's so ridiculous. Like, it was moments like this one where you are so low, where you are and should be dead, but then you get a nice saving shield at the very end from the Geb. The fact that he is alive here, insane. The fact that he lives to tell the tale, thanks to a good Geb shield there, ends up making it even more impressive. Just good communication from the Dragons, and of course the way they played it. And again, right here, if it isn't for the fact, like, literally any other hunter, if it's not Chiron and this steal doesn't happen, I think we really start to see the Dragons just steamroll over the Bolts. But luckily enough for them, Barra was able to get that. It helped equalize things, but didn't really shift it back into their dynamic.
It's mostly just a delay of game over anything else.
Yes.
You highlighted if they don't take that, they probably lose off the tail end of that Fire Giant. But because they got it, gives them just enough power, enough sustain to push the Dragons back for a little while longer. Then one of the only objectives that actually got started and finished by the same team was the Enhanced Fire Giant by the Jade Dragons. They picked that up later on in the game and are able to push forward and win game number 1. But if you look down the road at the damage charts, fine, okay.
Yes.
32,000 player damage.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that is the most interesting to me about this, right? You get Sam, who's impactful in a lot of the early game kills and helps them get to a good lead. PandaCat has some really flashy turnaround plays, but they didn't always have to translate to kills. In fact, most of Fine OK's damage didn't. But that doesn't matter, because what he was doing in a lot of these fights is going into this ult as a Cthulhu and zoning 4 people at a time, dealing damage to him, making him feel uncomfortable, forcing someone like Vin, who didn't end up dying throughout this entire game, but still pushing him into these positions where it's like, okay, well, you might not die here, but you're not going to be able to do anything if I can have anything to say about it. So this Cthulhu ended up being a huge and heavy hand pushing down and pushing away the Bolts and stopping them from pretty much getting anything done that they needed to. And again, if it weren't for the fact that the Chiron had that range, they wouldn't have had much to say about it. They would have fallen behind much quicker than the Dragons.
Yeah, maybe only one other hunter in the game could have done that, being maybe a Rom to try and steal that away. But let's hop into picks and bans for game number 2 and see how things shake up this time around. It was a very interesting picks and bans in game 1. I mean, the fact that we even saw, things like Cthulhu, Set, Susano, so many different gods picked in. We saw a Scotty ban of all things. I mean, this is a set of unpredictability, and I'm just going to open up with, I don't even know what priority is going to be for these two teams. We saw Artio, Hell, and Yamoja be the priority bans from the Jade Dragons in game 1. You think we'll see a repeat of those bans here in game 2?
Maybe from the Bolts, probably not from the Dragons. I mean, since their first pick, any of those that get through, they get immediately. I'm wondering though, if we assume the same top 6 bans, I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that the Dragons first pick Geb. That Geb looked amazing for them, and honestly, there didn't seem to be much answer from the Bolts. The downside is they would give up a whole ton in the process of getting there, so there is a little bit of pressure, maybe not even on them, to pick up a pick like that. And I don't know, it's been a while since we've seen Jake play Geb. I think he's played a couple of games in his career, but it's not necessarily the go-to style for the support for the Bolts. I'm sure he has it in his pocket and under his belt, but it's definitely a change of pace, I think. And the Bolts are going to be the ones who get to determine. I mean, if things like RDO are left open or Hell are left open, I imagine the Dragons scoop that up first.
I mean, you look at what was picked in that game, and you looked at what was banned. And one of the big things that stuck out to me when we were sitting back in the green room was Tiamat didn't get even looked at all. Raijin, not even an issue from either of these teams. There's a Morgan Le Fay who was on her release in that top 3. It was one team gets Tiamat, the other gets Morgan Le Fay, or one team bans Tiamat and they get Morgan Le Fay, and then kind of Raijin as a default. Neither of those two gods looked at it all in game number 1. They both just fell to the wayside as far as the drafts were concerned. But here in game 2, a little bit of similarities between the bans, maybe just a couple of them flopping sides here. Khepri and Yamoja by the Dragons, RTO and Odin by the Bolts.
I know we were talking about it on the way here. We were looking it up. So the Dragons, except for one set that they have played against the Bolts, have always won the first game. And again, for the only one of them that really mattered, they ended up winning that set in the Phase 2 playoffs. But this one has a lot of weight behind it as well. But it's one of those credences where they've always stumbled in games 2 and then game 3. And that's not just the case with the Bolts. I mean, there's a reason that they are the team with the most games played this year, and it's because they tend to do really well. I mean, we've seen some 20-minute stomps by the Dragons in game 1, and then game 2 gets pushed to 40 minutes, game 3 gets, swapped around, and maybe they're the ones getting stomped in like 25. And so I think that the fact that not only is that an elongated game, but also something that it tends to go the way of the Dragons anyway, I'm anxious to see how they adjust their early game here to see if they can amp it up the way they wanted to. I mean, like, you have to look at what they're playing. Like, the Geb, he's not the early game screaming front line that your team wants. He can do some work, but realistically, he is going to excel in that mid to late game.
A Cthulhu for a final ban along with Hell from the Jade Dragon. So throwing a lot of respect towards fine. Okay, 32,000 player damage, and if you look back at what his slash line was that game, it was 1-1-4. But you're telling me a 1-1-4 Cthulhu does 32,000 damage.
Exactly.
You highlighted he didn't really get a whole lot of kills or even assists to his name with it. But if you're able to put 32,000 damage just for existing, who cares about the kills at that point? It's a pick that needs to be taken away, and it will be a Geb first pick. Going one more time for Polar Bear Mike and a Chiron Ymir on the opposite side, and Hunbat's Ullers. We're starting to see that Hunbat's come back here in game 2.
I actually really like this Ymir, although it feels, and it's a little bit of a double-edged blade. It's a little early, and so now they know that they can pick people who have leaps or some sort of disengage to get away from a Ymir, but that also comes at, the cost of a cooldown for a cooldown, right? If you have follow-up and chase-up, the Bolts are going to be just fine with it. It does catch Geb out, though, and that's actually really big. Being able to lock him down, roll out, it's a great ability. Gives you CC immunity, you can knock people back, you also cannot travel through walls, so that is going to be something that in the jungle could potentially isolate this Geb, but Hunbats will be able to leap over the wall, Uller will as well. They still have ample time to choose a mid laner. Hey, guess who's still available? Raijin, Tiamat, both of them who still have, guess what, leaps that they can get over the wall with. And so maybe it's not going to be as potent as possible, but knowing that you're going to force a leap out of them, and that would be just from the wall, you can then collapse it. You've got a lot of chase with the Chiron and the Hu Yi, plus that doesn't even factor in the freeze and the beads that you're going to be able to get. The problem I see right now, though, is that the Dragons have Gebel, Cataclysm, and then the Hunbat's Fear No Evil. Those are ridiculously good teamfight ults, and they've got 2 of them. Nice big old circles that they're going to be able to jump forward. Ymir ult has nothing on that. The Hu Yi Suns can kind of hold a candle to it, but I think the Dragons, especially in those 3-on-3 in mid, but into the 5-on-5s, they're going to be burning somebody's beats.
I think it's very telling looking at the top SPL bans provided here in the middle. We see RTO was highlighted in the very beginning of the day in the waiting room. You mentioned and shows here that this god is the only god that has been 100% banned so far. Hell has made it through a couple of times, but Tiamat, the interesting one, 44% of games so far in Phase 3 has she been banned away. That doesn't include what she's been picked. And now with potentially 2 games for this set that she's not even going to be looked at by 2 teams, is maybe starting to tell of how much less, I would say, I'm not going to say how little, but maybe how much less these teams are really looking at this mid lane mage. It's a Giannis and Soul banned away by Bolt, and a Cerberus Sobek. Cerberus is actually an interesting one that made it so far down into the depths of these drafts, because in set number 1, Cerberus was a god that was being first pick, first ban. Usually it was the first ban coming from both of those teams.
And he's been one of the more dominant picks in Guardians just that we've had in solo lane as of late. So again, kind of surprising not only to see him get glanced over in some of these, but also the fact that like we had Kuzumbo picked up before him and over him last game. It's happening again here for the Bolts. And I'm going to go ahead and say that only because I can't, like, Ymir can solo lane, but I can't imagine taking it from Jake. That's the only thing that is stopping me from throwing him over there. It's also interesting to me, I mean, the Giannis, the Soul, those are very, very specifically Jade Dragon bans towards Herowind. But it kind of is eye-opening to me. The Bolts are a team that has in the past favored and do not shy away from playing Hunters in the mid-roll, and especially as we had highlighted in Waiting Room, and we've kind of had this conversation a couple of times, mid-Hunters right now, if you're going to go Hu Yi, you can throw the Uller, you could throw a Chiron, you could throw a Neath. Like, there are plenty of Hunters that can work out well there and look really good in the process.
With Chiron and Hu Yi locked in, surely we might be seeing this Chiron go towards mid lane. Hu Yi most likely in Barracuda's hands. And just as much as we were talking about the fact we didn't see any Tiamat, we didn't see any Raijin in Game 1, well, they prove us wrong here. Game number 2, Raijin as a 9th pick. Not something I get to say every day, not something I thought I would ever say in the current condition of Raijin for these mid-lane metas. The fact that he is being 9th picked, not even looked at, not even the fact that Tiamat was grabbed and they were just waiting, saying, okay, whatever, Tiamat, we don't have to pick Raijin away. It was immediately, is normally where Raijin is grabbed. First pick or first, top 2 kind of thing. Even I would go as far as saying a top 3 pick at all times for these teams. The fact he's getting 9th picked and now a Camazotz as a 10th pick. How are you kind of liking this Bolts draft as it's kind of lined itself out here?
It's got its quirks to it that are going to be strengths. I think Chiron in mid, it's something that Vin has very, very accomplished with that we've seen in the past. Hu Yi is a great boxer, and that we've seen Jake Ymir win games single-handedly. But there's also, again, a lot of leaps on the other side, a lot of good disengages, and I think it really is eye-opening. I like the Dragons draft, I think, a little bit stronger, but the Bolts, again, have their potential.
Hey, another cat to add to the SMITE League as far as how many pets are out here representing and having some fun. Newest Bolts fan, hyped for this LAN game at SMITE Pro at SPL Bolts. Turrets FTW coming out here with a nice tweet. Love the cat. Always love to see the pets not just amongst the fans but amongst the players. So we always get to see our love of everybody's little fur children as they jump out here. Game number 2. If game 1 was any indication how this set is going to go, you imagine we're going to be seeing a very long game here in Game 2, Gore?
Honestly, yeah, I think this is going to be able to drag on pretty well. Unless the Dragons, I think they have some potential to, but honestly, Hunbat's Geb, there's not a propensity to steamroll here in 17 minutes. I think either someone gets a lead and they're finishing in the 25 to 30 minute mark, or we're going in for a long haul. You've got 2 Guardians plus a Camazotz on the Bolts. They are not going to go down without a fight. And then with the team fight that the Dragons have, and especially with the scaling they have, a lot of their composition wants to wait a little bit.
And Sam, going back to this Hunbat's, it's a pick that I think this was back in Season 6 Worlds, I want to say, when he was making his first Worlds run. This was a pick that he was trying to grab as early in a draft as he can, and now we've been in this more Warrior-centric, so he hasn't gotten as much opportunity to play it. But, I mean, this was one of his, I would say, World's MVP picks during that Season 6. So seeing him back on this is at least going to be exciting for me. The Dragons trying to build a composition to work around it. A lot of big circles more than anything. Gebbolt, big circle to stun. Hunbat's big circle to push people away, and Nike with a big ultimate of her own. Jade Dragons looking to close the set here in 2-0 fashion. Can the Bolts beat them back and take us to game number 3? We're going to take it right down to the casters to see what happens.
See if the Dragons can take this one 2-0, or the Bolts are going to bounce things back, move us on to a game number 3. Still, Dolson, Mifflin, and Doug bringing in the action for game number 2 between the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. Any minute now, Mifflin, we'll get on into it. We can discuss it. Look, the Jade Dragons, they keep some things the same, and I think big initiation, burst damage-y style jungler for Sam for Soccer is an important one to look at here, because Sam, as J-Mac talks about, loves this style of pick, the Hunbat specifically, and we've already seen some success, Miff, out of the Hunbats already here this weekend.
Yeah, I've got great expectations for Sam for Soccer here, man. It's a god that he's got a lot of tenure playing, and it's one that he was trying to go towards even before the Assassins were buffed out. And Hunbots generally has been hailed as just that ultimate bot inside of the late game. You want to blink in, fear no evil, burn some beads, or if beads are down, the rest of your team can find the kill, but with the entirety of the Mace Tree seeing one buff or another to each individual Tier 3 item, I think that is going to directly assist Hunbots in his endeavors going forward. That said, I think the Devs do a great job of highlighting how steadfast this Olympus Bolts draft can be. I mean, double Guardian, double Hunter, and a Camazotz, that's hard to deal with throughout the early game, especially considering the scaling with which this Camazotz is just going to operate.
Miff, at what level of, what threat level, what concern level are you at here for the Olympus Bolts? You get Venenu, a physical damage dealer in the place of what would be magical there in the mid lane, playing the Hou-Yi, Barracuda, of course, playing a physical Hunter. I mean, your magic damage is going to have to come from support and solo lane. Do you think the potential is high enough there that prevents the Jade Dragons from just itemizing against physical damage? Do you think there's enough magical from the bolts to make things interesting?
I do. Haddix's reflect damage is almost enough on its own. I mean, I think I could have even seen Awesome Jake go Tor Warrior, and it would have been enough in my mind. But it is my main concern, I suppose, for the Olympus Bolts is that I had assumed that it was going to be Hou-Yi within the long lane.
That's what I thought too.
And then Chiron in mid. Hou-Yi does not have the greatest push on his own, shouldn't be able to match up with what Hurrywin is doing, and, well, generally doesn't have the greatest escape once that third ability is down. So Ven's going to have to play very safe in the lane.
Panda Cat back on the Uller. Looked good there in game one, Miff. I mean, it was very difficult to jump on there for the Olympus Bolts. Jade Dragons did a good job of mitigating threat to their backline. We had kind of had a passive discussion between games. You know, there was these big bursty moments of fighting that we kind of see happening here in the dual lane. Barracuda sends PBM right on back. Stun connects. And some damage will poke its way on in there onto PBM as well. Around the backside, way around the backside, is Sanford Soccer on this hunt path, but it would effectively been a 2v1 for how long it would have taken Panda Cat and PBM to rotate in and help out their jungler, and so Sanford Soccer will turn away.
Yeah, successful in stripping away the red buff this time around, and walks away like a bandit in the night. The Olympus Bolts none the wiser for what's happened there. Meanwhile, what's Laz been able to do on the map? He's trying to control the mids, he's trying to make sure that Ven's having an easier time, but he was not able to match that invade presence, but damage output, yeah, that's pretty good.
Deal some damage to Hurrywin before the Thunder Crash comes on out. Level 5 for one of the two mid laners here. And as I was kind of mentioning prior to the big rotation from Sanford Soccer, neither of the two supports last game Miff picked up that blink. We kind of had these moments of big chaotic back and forth fighting, then the things really died down around that FG. Big jump in from Panda Cat. Axe connects. Barracuda and the wall from Awesome Jake will help disengage that fight. The lack of blink maybe played a part in the slowing down of that game, the inability to kind of suddenly initiate these fights, but there's just so much value in other relics. Maybe you have to go without the blink, and I'm curious specifically with Jake here this game, if he feels blink is necessary on this Ymir.
I don't think he necessarily has to go towards it. Geb is always going to be a pretty easy target to isolate inside of the jungle, as he does not have a leap to deal with the wall, and with Ymir's buffs in Season 8, just feels pretty good. I mean, you can cancel the wall out early, get that cooldown back, and just immediately try and re-engage these fights. Even if he is using it to force a leap from Panda, Hurrywin, Sam, or Fine, if you instant cancel it, it's going to be up pretty shortly afterward. I think, if anything, I'm keeping my eyes on PBM. Likes to go for the Horrific Emblem very early on, a very aggressive selection out of your support, but yeah, I think it is a match where he really does have to keep his eyes towards that blink, needs the ability to close gap on the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah, Sunder then I think becomes a topic of conversation. You know, we haven't seen it much in the last couple of sets, counting this one. When there's a Nike on the other team, Sunder always has its day in court. And so actives actually, relics, become a pretty important topic of conversation as we start to hit that level 12 mark. We'll be able to follow along and see. Freeze wall, all of it sent out from Awesome Jake here. Looks like the purple buff actually gets dropped down by the Olympus Bolts, so a sneaky steal for the Bolts despite 3 members of the Dragons being close by, and the pressure on left paying off.
Early rotation from Ven there just kind of spells the end of that engagement for the Jade Dragons. Hurrywin still hovering mid, so it would have been a 3 versus 4, and the Dragons don't love their odds.
Wow, these walls from Jake have made PBM think twice about his positioning. Panda Cat's been low on mana for a little while here, had to walk up, clear the wave the good old-fashioned way. The Greater Scorpion taken down on the left side of the map. That means the Olympus Bolts have a little bit more presence around this Gold Fury. Specifically what I'm trying to say is the Gold Fury will spawn soon, We could see a grouping over on that side of the map. You can say the same thing for right and the Pyromancer as well. We've hit that level 5 mark and even gone past it. Level 7 now, Myth, for both of these junglers. And that's where maybe Sam for Soccer starts to carry some weight here. Lasbra great at chasing and executing targets with the bat out of hell. But this Fear No Evil from Sam plus Blink could be a great fight starter early in the game.
It can be. I thought maybe again we'd see the Jotun's Wrath in that first slot, but instead it's going to be the Crusher for Sam for Soccer. A little bit of additional attack speed, gets a power boost here in 8.9 as well, and it seems like Sam really has found a home within this item. And I can't tell you how happy it makes me, Dave, to see junglers ahead of ADCs, or at least even, man. The XP changes inside the jungle are really nice for these assassins now. Both level 7, Panda Cat, level 6. It's jungle supremacy.
Right, you can't be biased towards a team, but
a role?
Bias
Yeah, I got
towards
that.
a role is totally allowed, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you've made it clear. I guess, Aggro and I haven't necessarily hidden things either. Though I have mentioned I'm starting to sway a little bit. I'm a big carry guy here recently. So
Sorry for you.
Yeah, I know. Stinks right now. The jungle's feeling good. Yeah, me and my carry family that I've been a part of for so long are just getting jumped on by the junglers. It's unbelievable. Venenu takes a little bit of damage here from Hurrywin in the mid lane, has to drop the Suns, backs away. Hurrywin actually left worse for wear after that fight. Purple buff dropped down.
Great shield.
Panda Cat will pick it up. Great shield, as you point out, from PBM to keep Panda Cat where he is. Lasbra's lurking on the left side of the map here. There's a quick ward just further to the right. Now Lasbra, I think, able to avoid just a little bit. Polar Bear Mike on the other side of the wall. Barracuda! What happened to his health bar? That's Panda Cat. And Lasbra was there, but I'm not sure this is a fight the Bolts want to take any longer.
No, Barracuda learned his lesson, man. Do not step up to Panda Cat when he's got his entire ability rotation available. Eats the axe, the hail of arrows, and the bladed arrows, and walks away with about 20% HP. And that is going to be a rotation of abilities that is available often to Panda Cat, who went for the Jotun's Wrath inside of that first slot. Meanwhile, on the other end, Barracuda going for the Transcendence a little bit earlier on. Both hunters seem to like the builds that they went in Game 1. For those of you who need help remembering, Panda Cat does go towards Transcendence in that second item slot, and Barracuda will go Jotun's in his second item slot.
So rude.
Is it? What?
For those of you with too small brains
Whoa, I didn't say it that way, man. Come on.
It was the connotation, Myth. It was the inflection.
Well, I'm using the denotation. Just
for
taking
those
it
of
face
you who
value.
need help remembering.
Oh, God. Come on.
What were their builds?
Oh, see? So it's you I'm talking to. Jotun's in a Transcendence for Panda, and Transcendence into Jotun's for Barra.
And that's what it was in Game 1?
For those of you that need help remembering.
Yeah, that's me. I need help remembering. Gold Fury oracled up now by the Jade Dragons. Hurrywind playing safe. If Awesome Jake rounds his corner, he'll be spotted out. Hurrywind into the Charon's coin. So you get some percent pen early in this game.
Building different this time.
Yeah, so a little bit different for
he's
those of you who need help remembering. Well, it's going to be a different look for Ven because he's not playing Scylla anymore this game, and you're not able to. And so Charon's coin into Soul Gem is what it looks like here for Hurrywin Myth. You'll get some decent burst damage early in the game.
Yeah, that's going to help out a fair bit for Hurrywin, but I think that it is generally still going to be a very slow build for him here. It isn't going for a huge power spike early on. Instead, kind of keeping his eye towards the team fight.
Oh, we might be
maybe,
fighting.
Yeah, maybe an invade instead.
Might be scrapping a bit here. Venenu's got Sam for Soccer around the backside. Up in the air he goes. And back to the rest of his team. Breaks the Suns down as well. This is great disengage from the Olympus Bolts, but the taunts back through for Hurrywin. The Taiko drums doing a whole lot of work here.
Woo!
Mike turns it right back around. Is Lasbra going to chase down the support? The answer is no. Raiju is out onto Awesome Jake. Does Jake have a wall to save his life? He's got one, but it's kept Sam right where he is, and it's on top of Jake. Jade Dragons find first blood.
Sam for Soccer completely cannot keep the chase. You better believe had he had just a little bit more mana, he's likely jumping over that red wall and chasing out the kill onto Lasbra. That's the Olympus Bolts committing a lot of their resources into PBM on this Geb, and well, you can't shut down a Geb that easily, not at this portion of the game, not when he's got a health shield that large. And Awesome Jake left high and dry. Well, he's left out to dry. Gets picked up. Jade Dragons 1-0, 10 minutes in.
Man, this Sam for Soccer pick just has so much threat with it, and it's what we saw work out so well in our first set of the day for Captain Twig. Twig kind of win off on this Hunbat's pick, and I think that's an early look at what Sam might feel comfortable doing. I mean, of course, everyone dreams of this big 5-man Fear No Evil.
Every night.
But if you can just, that's what you go to sleep thinking about. But if you can just jump on Ven, take the beads away, I'll help you out in the rest of the fight.
It will, man.
Oh.
Sanford Soccer doing so much for his squad. Lasper actually.
That scared me.
Nearly falling
and
into
just
the pyro.
any low health bar just like kind of makes me jump automatically. I mean, he probably wasn't really under that much threat. The rest of Lasper's team was there. But I will admit my eyes widened suddenly, and I was about ready to call Lasper dead. But good juggling of aggro there. We'll get the Pyromancer down for the bolts.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one to show up on live stream fails. Luckily, Laz were able to avoid that narrowly this time around, and the Olympus Bolts get to keep their dignity a little bit longer. 600 gold lead or so in favor of the Jade Dragons, maybe closer to 800 at this point. But the Olympus Bolts still
6
completely
XP.
in this game. Yeah,
This
that
game is
experience
broken
huge.
wide open.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that's important, especially after some of the ebbs and flows that we've seen. And it's really the equalizer from Haddix and Barracuda, right? Because there's a 1-level lead in mid for Hurry, 1-level lead in jungle for Sam. And then in both of the side lanes, the Hunter and the solo laner for the Bolts have themselves a slight lead here in this game. So that's why you see the XP so even. Gold still pretty mitigatable here. Gold Fury is up. And we saw a plenty of dancing around the Fire Giant in game number 1 for both squads. And when a game is this close, the Gold Fury can be somewhat impactful, especially if you're able to get a couple of kills on the back end. When you got the initiation of Sanford Soccer on the other side, I think you do have to maybe be a little bit extra cautious when a Fear No Evil can start things up.
Rotation from Final K is a little bit early here. Unfortunate for the Jade Dragons. Seemed like they were trying to get primed and ready to head in towards this Gold Fury, considering the solo laner had left his lane, which generally does spell that. But Pandacat forced to use almost the entirety of his mana, clearing out purple buff and then escaping the wall from Awesome Jake is immediately forced back to his own base, which means Final K walks over, walks back, but at least able to strip away a couple of back camps on his way.
Well, Asbra's had a quiet game so far. Has been there on a couple of the answers. Sanford Soccer 100% kill participation for his team. I say that, of course, through a slight smirk on my end. Haddix and Final K haven't been able to get involved yet. Final K attempted to, as you pointed out just a moment ago, Miff. And J-Mac, you know, pretty apt while it's elementary and it's core. Sanford Soccer just one-shots Barracuda. Man, I'm kind of right yet again there. Sam happy just to throw out Fear No Evils on one target and get the kill.
You've been patting yourself on the back all day today.
It rarely happens. I rarely get stuff right. I have to when I do. I have to.
All right, fair enough. You're right. It is Sanford Soccer throwing out the ultimate on his own against a target that had both beads and ultimate available, strips both, and the life of Barracuda, opening the door for this Gold Fury.
For what it's worth, that's not an incredible call on my end at all. Is there a steal potential here? Venenu has the ultimate. Lasper is in the back. Bat out of hell swoops through, and there's a lot of damage from Venenu and his ultimate in mid, and Ven gets one down. Sanford Soccer teleports back in with the freeze from Jake. Delays out this fight, but it's a full-on sweep. Jade Dragons come up big. They'll get 3, but the Olympus Bolts able to get 2 as well.
Man, great pathing from PBM to drag the entirety of the Bolts towards the left-hand side away from Haddix. Haddix, that entire time, is like, guys, if I can get into the fight, I'll Watery Grave, I'll disrupt the backline, maybe we can take it from there. But he was not allowed to participate, and instead is chasing the coattails of the entirety of the Dragons, just trying to close that gap. And instead, well, he steals back camp, has to waddle away back to his lane. Jade Dragons coming out ahead inside of that left-hand side skirmish, but Gold still essentially dead even. Experience maybe now a little bit more so separating these teams, yeah, from 60 to 800. This game, it's back and forth, man. It is incredibly close.
Yeah, this one very, very close. Polar Bear Mike, we wondered how some of that support itemization would look going up against the team composition that the Bolts have built, both carries, physical DPS, the jungler, physical DPS. You're relying on support and solo to dole out that magical damage. And so Polar Bear Mike Miff, I mean, it makes some sense. You go Thieves right into Sovereignty, and that Sovereignty should have some good value for the rest of Mike's team.
It should, and help him out a lot in his own survivability. Last time around, PBM went for a slightly different build, some Relic Dagger in the second slot, immediately into the Pridwin, so it does have a nice little health shield, decent defense both ways, but not necessarily those full dedicated tank items that you expect from your support. This time around, though, is electing to go that path and should be allowed to stand in front of whoever he wants on the Olympus Bolts for a very long time. Sovereignty and the Double Hunter only feels good.
Gold Fury still stands. It's been a while. Been hanging out 15.5 minutes into the game. Steal. No, the Bolts won't take it away this time. The Jade Dragons snag the Gold Fury for themselves. So the gold lead starting to build up just a little bit further now for the Dragons. And that's a good quick call here from this Dragons team. edges that gold lead ever so further towards the Jade Dragons, about another 1,000 or so for them. hi-rez picked up here for Sanford Soccer. And I kind of joke about my call. I mean, of course, an assassin with everything at his disposal against a carry is going to use everything at his disposal. Disposal. Is that the right word?
At his disposal? Yeah.
Is that the phrase?
Yeah.
That one just, I said it because I assumed it was right, and then the moment I said it, it didn't sound right, but I guess it is. Sanford Soccer using everything at his disposal.
I believe. Well, now that you've said it
that's
so
what
many
I'm saying.
times.
It sounds weird. My point being, Sanford Soccer's got a lot of damage here, Miff, and if Venenu or Barracuda are left unchecked, left unpeeled by any of their front lines, Sam is poised to have a big, big game.
And I'd argue that he's already done enough in my book. You know, I mean, 2, 1, and 3, 5 out of 5 kill participation from the jungler on the Jade Dragons. And you're talking about Peel. The Olympus Bolts, it's more so engaged. As far as Peel's concerned, it's just Watery Grave from Haddix, maybe a Freeze from the 408, or maybe a Pyromancer for the Jade Dragons.
The engage from Haddix has caught me off guard, and I think it caught Sam off guard as well. Horrific Emblem gets used here by Polar Bear Mike, and that'll slow down Awesome Jake, but it's a turnaround from the Dragons you have to be wary of. Barracuda was back in base, so he'll start to push further forward, but maybe sensing that this fight is over, Barracuda rotates on back to the left. So Pyromancer, as well as the Gold Fury, go to the Jade Dragons. The Bolts attempt something there. Haddix gets aggressive early, but a tough composition to chase down for the Dragons.
Yeah, Haddix blinks in after the Pyromancer actually falls, so the Olympus Bolts kind of as a team said, there's no real reason to take this fight right now. We're not fighting over much. We can't bring back the Pyro and take it ourselves, so it was a kind of half engage from Haddix, where the rest of the Bolts were like, oh, I guess we're going in here, and the Jade Dragons are able to walk out. Yet again, this gold lead has now ballooned itself to 4,000 in favor of the Order team. Experience around the same. Okay, you just is that what we want to do? It's semantics?
Yep.
All right, so 3.7K in favor of the Jade Dragons. You were in a weird mood today, Dave. Okay, 18 minutes in, Fire Giant not exactly on the menu for either of these teams, but give it about 2-3 minutes, and then the Jade Dragons find themselves in a very similar position as they did in Game 1 and could very easily approach this Fire Giant. I think in a game pace like this, you have to evaluate which team scales better. I think there is an argument for the double Hunter composition, but with both Hunters going this new age, Jotun's Transcendence full Mace Tree build, I'm not exactly sure how that power curve is going to line up. So then you have to evaluate ease of play. And I'd argue Jade Dragons, their composition, much easier to perform on. Large AoE CC from Sanford Soccer. Hurrywin has great damage output. I mean, the engage factor from PBM, it's all there. Whereas the Olympus Bolts, all their damage, the core of it, single target between these double Hunters.
Yeah, we kind of joked, right? I mean, the analysis seems elementary, but at its core, it's right. You got a bunch of circles that either fear you, stun you, deal damage to you, slow you down, and if the Jade Dragons can stack those up, that's where the Olympus Bolts end up falling a bit by the wayside. And then you've got a couple characters in the Raijin and in the Uller, and in Sanford Soccer's case, the Hunbats itself at following up on some of that damage. The builds continued on here for Hurrywin. Soul Gem completed into Divine Ruin, then it looks like a Soul Reaver after that. That Soul Reaver will be a big spike here for this Raijin out of mid. You've already got some decent penetration of both percentage and flat built up. And that Soul Reaver maybe is the next big power spike that the Jade Dragons look to utilize.
Yeah, it's essentially the magical equivalent of the Heartseeker Hidden Dagger build, right? Like you want that initial burst of damage when you start a fight. That's what Soul Gem and Soul Reaver are able to afford you together. So Hurrywin gonna have a large deal of burst available to him once he heads back to base one more time. 20 minutes in the game, Jade Dragons still have a very sizable gold and experience lead. I'm expecting them to either wait for this Oni Fury to respawn, group up there and force a fight, and then if they win that fight, I don't think it's necessarily the Oni Fury we're fighting over, but the couple of kills could net either one of these teams a Fire Giant at this point in the game.
It's kind of the fallout after that fight that could make a big difference here. Jade Dragons, they have not played in studio with us for a little while, and they're back, and they're looking good. At least after Game 1 into Game 2 here, they're looking good to maybe close out this set 2-0. They'll be in studio again tomorrow for a matchup against the Atlantis Leviathans. That's one to look forward to as well. Haddix, Awesome Jake, Venenu, they'll all step forward here. Barracuda and Lasbra off to the left. Or Sanford Soccer, that's the question you got to be asking yourself if you're the Olympus Bolts here. He's got Blink, And he's got the bubble, so CC immunity will help him out finding some of those engages. Haddix finds his way into the back line, and he's disrupted. And he's pushed Hurrywin back against the wall. Aegis is out for this Raijin. Lazbra on the other side. Gets deleted. Hurrywin has not fallen yet, but he will. Haddix finally chases down the mid laner, and look at PandaCat kiting his way backwards, doing a whole lot of damage to Haddix. Sanford Soccer has been left alone elsewhere, and this fight for the Jade Dragons is looking good.
Sanford Soccer left alone, but takes out his sole opposition now, rejoins the fight with Fido K and Haddix. Well, I'm not sure how tanky you really are.
Haddix pushes Fido against the wall, but that's Haddix is taking a lot of damage. PandaCat on a killing spree. The Ullr's looking just fine, if you ask me. Double kill for Panda, 403 for the Jade Dragons Hunter, and we'll head back for the Fury.
It was a tale of two fights for the Olympus Bolts. Haddix dives deep into the back line, isolates Hurrywin with a couple other frontliners, and are eventually able to take out the Raijin, but the dive of the Jade Dragons was much more successful, shutting down Ven and Barracuda individually. Lazbra comes into that fight and eats the entirety of Tycho Drums, doesn't even get a chance to use the Bat Out of Hell, and when Lazbra's dead with his ultimate available, you gotta think that the rest of the Olympus Bolts are going to be suffering for it. Oni Fury and the fight go the way of the Jade Dragons.
Olympus Bolts at least able to get a kill under Hurrywin. I mean, that's the silver lining here in this fight.
That's all they got.
That's all they got. Hurrywin is going to back, or he had to go back, but he'll now respawn, finishes off that Soul Reaver, and we will head to the right side of the map here, Mifflin. So, Blink picked up for Awesome Jake. We wondered if one of the two Guardians would do so. So now there is maybe an opportunity for the impending Fire Giant dance to speed itself up here a little bit. Though with Fine OK, who has Blink, Sanford Soccer, who has Blink, it's not like the engage is lacking on the other side.
No, but we'll see how the Jade Dragons elect to play with this lead, 6,500, and in a similar position again as they were in Game 1. Fire Giant was stolen away by the Olympus Bolts on a Barracuda.
Yeah, that's right.
On the exact same pick. Centaur is still available, so you got to think that's in the back of the Jade
and
Dragons'
you got
heads.
Ven's ultimate.
Uh-oh. Yeah, maybe win one more fight, Jade Dragons, before you actually look at the Fire Giant proper. And that seems to be the call. Everyone just kind of waiting for their opportunity to group up together here. And Sanford Soccer waiting for the opportunity to look for a 1v1. But Barracuda, he's not going to show back up.
This Ullr pick has just been a treat to watch, hasn't it? You know, in our set earlier today, now PandaCat looked good on this pick. There's something about a good Ullr that just makes your eyes go wide, and it's really exciting to watch. And PandaCat has looked great so far, 403 on this pick. Second to highest net worth in the game, only down by about 40 gold or so, and decent up on the player damage charts as well. We wondered how the magical damage would look for the Olympus Bolts. Top of the charts is Haddix. No surprise when Blink, Thorns, and the good old spikes there in the Kuzumbo kit have helped out, reflecting plenty of damage back into the Jade Dragons. So it looks like we are going to start a bit of a dance here around the FG, Miff. The Jade Dragons playing with some house money as far as their lead goes. You can step forward, you can ward up a little bit more aggressively. Olympus Bolts don't have much as far as backline, other side of the Fire Giant pit ward coverage, but you got a couple on those entrances from mid lane, so you'll sense kind of the coming and going of the Jade Dragons there. But you're going to have to step up at some point and make sure this FG isn't going down.
Take a peek at the pockets of all these players. 2 wards for the entirety of the Olympus Bolts, both standard wards and both inside of Haddix's pocket, whereas the Jade Dragons, they've got wards on the map and wards in pocket right now. That is a significant advantage coming to this Fire Giant dance. Jade Dragons strip away 1 ward, control a little bit more of that vision, and now have both defensive and offensive vision control around the Fire Giant pit, but do not utilize it. Instead, strip away some more towers.
Yeah, I mean, look at how the Bolts respond. They back up. They now know where the Dragons are.
Too.
But it looks like it could be a quick and easy tier 2 tower. PandaCat doing a lot of damage. Lazbra engages on Sanford Soccer on the left. The jungler's 1v1ing. Fear no evil is out, but Lazbra into the Bat Out of Hell is winning the engagement on left, and he gets the kill. Massive pick for the Olympus Bolts. Big outplay from Lazbra as well, and suddenly the winds and the sails of the Olympus Bolts. You've gotten a lopsided trade, and they want to chase down more.
Ven does fall to Final K inside of his own tier 2 tower, and that could spell the end of the engagement here. But one upshot of having 2 hunters means that if one falls, there's still another standing, and Barracuda can generate enough threat on the Fire Giant if the Olympus Bolts decide to head that way. But instead, they want to trade some towers. They want this tier 1.
They're going to walk forward. Haddix will take a little bit of damage from PandaCat here. A little bit becomes a lot as Haddix is just above half HP here. Final K back from base has been able to fully top off those health bars. Lasbra's lurking on left. The man who made the big play over Sanford Soccer gave his team a breath of fresh air in game number 2. Continues to walk forward. Fantastic wall from Awesome Jake, but it's shielded out by PBM, and Panda Cat will jump on over. Haddix pins Panda Cat right on back, and the Olympus Bolts get a big stagger kill. A minute death timer on Panda.
Panda Cat nearly able to return that kill onto Lazarus, but the healing now already ticking him up over 60% of his own HP bar. And you're right, man, having Panda Cat dead for 45 seconds is going to be massive for the Olympus Bolts, who are teetering on the edge. It was, what, 8,000 gold in favor of the Jade Dragons. They've got the vision advantage around the Fire Giant itself, but instead go for a little bit of a greedy play, trying to chase out that tier 2 tower and put that one down.
Big Lasbra, you got to look back at him. Another ultimate from Sanford Soccer. This time towards Barracuda, who's now being dove. Centaurus is out. Can Lasbra turn around enough damage to give Barracuda a chance? The answer is no. Sanford Soccer picks up the kill. The Jade Dragons have flipped things right back yet again. Now Barracuda dead for a minute.
50 entire seconds, actually, Dave. So, Panda Cat going to be alive in 5 seconds. It is. Gold Fury, though, Primal Fury, rather, going to be looked at by the Jade Dragons, and that should make it a little bit easier to go for Pyros or Fire Giants in the near future. Still, going to have a long time left to play with while Barracuda's dead. I imagine we see Sanford Soccer head back to base, heal up, spend that gold, and immediately regroup, head straight to this Fire Giant.
Yeah, you would think. Panda Cat is now back and respawned. And onto the right side he goes. So 20 seconds without Barra. There is this small window now for the Jade Dragons. If you really want to push a fight, you really want to take it, you can still do so for the next 15 seconds now, plus a little bit of travel time for Barracuda to get on out of base. Maybe a better opportunity spent dewarding and rewarding the backside. But instead it gets pulled. Hurrywin spotted out. Lasbra's on the left here. Sanford Soccer in behind. Drops a ward down. Will sense Lasbra once Lasbra walks forward. Fire Giant down to half HP. Barracuda's respawn, but he's back in base. Double Fear No Evil from Sanford Soccer. Will get Benanu up and over. Go to. But Benanu lives on. Drops the ultimate onto himself. Polar Bear Mike's gotten a kill onto Lasbra. Elsewhere in this fight now. Haddix taunted. Right back in, and Panda Cat's dealing the damage.
Haddix burning quickly, sumo slam into the wall, only to buy a couple of seconds. Credit to Hurrywin.
Whoa, no, Sanford Soccer's low, Panda Cat's low. Can Olympus Bolts re-engage on this fight? Awesome Jake doesn't think so. Awesome Jake trying to leave. It's carries plus support, all that are left alive for the Olympus Bolts. Panda Cat up and over the wall. Thunder Crash buys time for the stun, buys time for the flurry of damage, but he is tanky. Awesome Jake lives on a little bit longer. Barracuda rotates into this fight as well, but has he done too much? Has he stayed too long? For now, the answer is no, but it becomes yes, as Hurrywin will put him down.
Awesome Jake turns around to watch his fellow duo laner fall down and maybe loses the opportunity to walk out himself. Hurrywin with the damage is going to whittle away at him, and that's the right verbiage. Jake's
eventually
just too tanky.
Oh, the wall is there. Thunder Crash gets used yet again, and finally it's Hurrywin who silences Awesome Jake. Killing spree for the Raijin. That started off as a good pull for the Jade Dragons. There was a moment where that second wind might have looked good for the Bolts, but it was anything but. The Jade Dragons run away with the fight and now can look back towards Fire Giant.
That is twice now in this game where Lasbra dives deep onto Hurrywin, closes gap, and then dies before he's allowed to use the Bat Out of Hell. This Camazotz can't die that quickly. He can't. He has to apply the damage to Hurry, Vampiric Bats, and then get into the air, forcing the type of drums.
Oh, he steals it! Wow! Steals it away! He'll pay for it with his life! But yet again, the Bolts stay alive, and yet again, it's a Hunter who takes it away. How impactful is it? Two members of the Bolts have the FG. It's Haddix and Lasbra. The Jade Dragons get a pick. They get 45 seconds without the mid, and they'll walk down right.
Yeah, I'll admit, I was talking over it. I thought it was a 0% chance there for the steal to come through, but then comes up big for his team, but at the cost of his life, might also lose a Phoenix.
It might. Olympus Bolts have the FG. As we so often see, when you're behind and you steal, it's more of a delay than anything else, and the Jade Dragons not wanting to feel delayed will start to siege up this right side Phoenix. Lasbra taking low. Hurrywin has Thunder crashed into the base of the Olympus Bolts, and he will walk away after using the Taiko drums. Good wall from Awesome Jake, but there's no damage. Nobody is looking at Hurrywind right now as he's been able to Thunder Crash out yet again. Lasbra on left. Sanford Soccer wants to 1v1 yet again. Lasbra puts him down one more time, and Lasbra wins the jungle fight yet again.
And now he's able to chase on through the jungle. The rest of the Bolts should be able to close gap. Blink forward, nice wall!
Oh, it's massive from Jake. It's huge even. The Olympus Bolts, they'll chase their way right back in. Lasbra lurking around the back. Awesome Jake detonates some damage. What can the Kamazats get done? Not a whole lot. Bat out of hell swooping through. Panda Cat waiting on the other end, and it's another good wall from Awesome Jake. A whole series of highlights for the Amir. And the Olympus Bolts get Sam. Lasbra gets Sam. And the right side Phoenix stands.
I can't believe Sam decides to take that 1v1, man. First off, Kamazats just out-damaged you. Every time you use overhead smash inside of a 1v1, you are trading out DPS, but now a look back, then makes it look easy.
One old tick of the ultimate is all you need there. Venenu's got it. So at 1-4-1, Venenu is still able to make a play that is beyond the impact of what his KDA looks like so far this game. But I mean, what, it's the exact same scenario as game one where you steal away a Fire Giant, but you're still down 9,000 gold. This time, though, not everyone from the Bolts has it. It's only Lasbra and Haddix. Truly a delay moment now for the Olympus Bolts, where it's not going to get any worse. Your Phoenix is still up, and you've given yourself another chance in this game.
Still 10,000 gold separating these two teams. A couple tier 2 towers still standing for the Bolts as well. I think the Jade Dragons are so far ahead at this point that they might be able to just go ahead and maintain their pressure. With only Fire Giant on 2 members of the Olympus Bolts, I don't think that's enough to really measure or put any weight on the decision-making scales of the Jade Dragons as they start to establish defensive positioning around the Oni Fury.
It's fine, okay, who's up front here. The Nike has put together a quiet but good performance. 208 for Fine OK after a massive performance on the Cthulhu in game one. Fine OK has continued his trend of good play on into game 2 here. The Olympus Bolts will step up. Except remember, game 1 was lost on an Oni Fury fight that the Bolts shouldn't have taken. And so you need to be careful here if you're taking a fight around an Oni Fury when you're this far down in a game yet again. But realizing that maybe those Oni waves would add enough pressure that could give the Jade Dragons their opening to finish off this game. The Olympus Bolts will step up. Lasbra is on left. Outside of Sanford Soccer taking a quick 1v1 against his counterpart. Should be going into this fight even-keeled.
This might be the most tense 33-minute Oni Fury dance I've ever had the pleasure of casting, man. I mean, either team could completely win a game off of a clean team fight here. Olympus Bolts might not have any Phoenix exposed, but this late in the game, it does not matter. Awesome Jake, moving forward.
He's got 3 yet again. There was a moment there where the engage could have happened. Chuckled a moment ago. There's something funny about Oni Fury punching a Nene. Awesome Jake walks forward, gets a freeze onto Panda Cat. Some damage on the back end as well, but Awesome Jake is paid for it with half of his health bar. It's Lasbra for Sanford Soccer, round 3. But Sanford Soccer feeling good about his chances this time around, and Sanford Soccer's got it. The 1v1 to the Jade Dragons this time, and now the Olympus Bolts corralled on in, and look at the collapse from the Jade Dragons. Olympus Bolts put in the dirt. Game 2 comes to a close, and it's the Jade Dragons taking the set.
Is that a triple quadra kill for Panda Cat to close this one out? Lasbra, you ruined it, man. Could have been a penta. The Olympus Bolts, second verse, same as the first. Do not step up to an Oni Fury against the Jade Dragons 34 minutes into the game. That's exactly where they want you.
And the Jade Dragons will walk this one on in. This game, not without its drama. This set, not without its drama. It'll end with the Jade Dragons on top 2-0. The Olympus Bolts, they put up a fight. They stole away a couple Fire Giants, but not enough down the stretch. Shaky, right? You know the Jade Dragons, you know the standards they hold themselves to. They are not going to be thrilled with the way that this set was won. I mean, this was back and forth. You think they're
Dub's a dub, man. All right, that's the Olympus Bolts.
Right, we're talking about the Jade Dragons. Myth, you're not a member of the Jade Dragons.
I'm not.
You're happy because you just got a win. The Jade Dragons expect excellence, and it was a little back and forth, a little choppier than they would have expected. Right? Am I wrong?
Look, man, you can go ahead. You're doing the interview after this, right?
Yep.
Go ahead and ask whoever you're interviewing if they're happy with their win.
Oh, I will.
I guarantee it's a yes.
They're going to say it's a win's a win. Oh, it's Mike. This is free money for me.
He's like, nah, man, should have played it cleaner.
Yes, that's what.
It's a 2-0.
The Jade Dragons are able to take this one 2-0 over the Olympus Bolts. We'll see how PBM feels about it right after this.
gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for final. He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
Ripping through, Titan, down, ball three, a double kill myself.
Hey there, SMITE fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor,
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
And what's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the SMITE Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible SMITE experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Hello and welcome back to the desk for the SMITE Pro League. One final time for the afternoon, the evening, or whatever time of day it may be for you. And a big shout out to our title sponsor for the SPL for allowing us to be able to bring all this amazing action to you and to the pros. Obviously, it's going to be Alienware. Go over to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get all the details on that sweet stuff that they have, all those peripherals between their desktop, the Aurora Ryzen 10, the 240 Hz gaming monitor, 25-inch. It's always a nice monitor to have. Way bigger and way nicer than any monitor I've ever owned. So if you want your chance to get that, you can go there. Make sure to follow them on their social medias at Alienware on Twitter and Instagram. And go to alienwarearena.com to look at all the other cool giveaways and news they have available for their glowing global community. Game number 2, Jade Dragons are able to close this out in a very similar fashion to what it felt like in game number 1. A lot of back and forth, but Jade Dragons, they just have what it takes to pull it out, and Olympus Bolts stagger just a little bit.
Yeah, you get a good couple of plays from the Bolts that delay the Dragons, but delay is about the best they can get. They have a little bit of pushback. They stop them from rolling over them and breaking the base, but that's really where it started to slow down. It is around those Phoenixes. Things got a little more difficult for them. Sam just has a lights-out game. I think everybody on the Dragons had a lights-out game, but I think we've been looking at Sam a lot this year and like seeing this transition, of course, going back to like the style of jungle that we have known and seen him play very well in the past, fit perfectly. Panda Cat and Mike just had insane plays. Panda Cat, like the Geb Shield saved so many people, but Panda Cat got to look flashy because of it. And so I guess that's like the burden of support is making others look good. And I think this Geb pick just worked out incredibly well for them. It seems like he's going to be working really well. There's a good reason they first picked it here, and I expect that if they're going to continue looking like this, then we have a much heavy-handed contender in the Dragons this phase.
And then what better way to end out the game than a quadra kill from Panda Cat to close everything out? You know, one thing
that's just flashy. It's too flashy for me.
It's too nice. But one thing you brought up at the very end of the desk segment going into game 2 was that the Dragons, notorious for winning game number 1 of a set, and then losing game 2, and then potentially even game 3 after that. This is one of the first times, I won't say the, but it's one of the first times that Jade Dragons not only win game 1, but they're able to close it out in game 2. And I think this is the only 2-game set that these two teams have had against each other this phase.
Yeah, they have. So the only time, this is the second time the Dragons have beat the Bolts, but it's the only time it's been a 2-0, and no matter what. They've always gone 3 games, which makes this even more impressive that they were able to find that win. It looked like it was going to bounce back. Lasbra had a lot of really good plays towards the end there, getting into the back line, using that bat out of hell. There were a lot of really great walls from Jake that almost set them up for some really good kills, but unfortunately for them, it was almost, never quite jumping over there. The Dragons were just really good at collapsing in and really reforming their formation and bouncing back into the fight.
One of the boons of having such a strong support by your side is you're able to put up some nutty player damage like Panda Cat, 29,000. And speaking of supports, we have Polar Bear Mike standing by with Dolson for our post-game interview. Let's kick it over to them.
That's right, I got a strong support by my side, and it's PBM standing by my side to talk about this set a little bit. Mike, it has been, I don't know, months, since you guys have been back in the studio here, we get you back in the studio. You start things off against the Bolts. What's it like being back in here?
It feels great. This is actually the first time we've ever played with Sam that isn't an online game.
That's wild.
In 2 years, yeah.
That's actually crazy to think about.
Yeah, the first time any of us have played in a LAN setting since Season 6 World, so we were really worried about Sam being nervous. We tried to give him a massage before the game, and he played pretty well, I think.
Yeah, talk to me about Sam. Look, there's been this big jungle change. Things have shifted. You see more assassin-y style jungles. Sam and then kind of the team as a whole, do you feel like you've adapted pretty well to the new style of SMITE?
Yeah, I think, same boat as every other team. We're just trying to figure out, what changed and what we think fits us. Of course, the jungle changes are huge. People have been hoping jungle doesn't get changed for a long time. They know what's going to happen to them when Sam's in the game. So unlucky for them, good for us.
Final thoughts here. I have a lot riding on this with Mifflin. How happy are you with the way the team played here today in your win?
Well, considering it's a single round robin for the seeding on the group stage, of course we want to win. I think my carries are not great at securing objectives. We'll have a talk about that. We'll work on that. Make roster changes if need be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Anything's on the table here for the Jade Dragons. 2-0 win. But, maybe some changes over the horizon. You heard it here from PBM first. Thanks for talking with me, Mike. Congrats on the win. We'll go back to the desk to finish out the day.
Well, hopefully here at the tail end of Phase 3, we don't see any roster changes, and maybe with a performance like that, we won't need to. Maybe just clean up a little bit of the mess that you had there in that set, but I'm sure the Jade Dragons even here in their first studio match. I think it's a big one to point out that this is their first studio match in years, and especially their first one with their new jungler, Sam for Soccer, on the team, and it did not feel like it was all that different from their normal style of play on lands.
And so it's one thing, like, if you've watched SMITE for a long time, you think back to it, like a lot of Worlds, January was always that date, but there were those few years where we were in November, right? And so thinking back to it, Season 6 was one of those. Like, it's literally almost been 2 years for a lot of these players since they've gotten to be on LAN.
If you've missed any of the SPL action so far, if you're just now tuning in, well, sorry you missed all the fun, but let's take a look at the schedule and see exactly what you may have missed, what you might want to catch up on, or what you can look forward to. Camelot Kings take down the Scarabs 2-1 for our first set of the day. Jade Dragons in the first 2-0 between these two teams, able to get a win over the Olympus Bolts. Tomorrow we'll kick off with the Solar Scarabs and the Oni Warriors, and then the Jade Dragons back in studio again tomorrow. You saw them once, you'll get to see them again against the Atlantis Leviathans this time. And then on Sunday we'll round it out with the Olympus Bolts and the Valhalla Valkyries, and then the Kings and Titans for our final set of the week. Man, what a way to start a weekend where we get 2 appearances of the Dragons in studio.
I love hey, so you know how you guys haven't really played on LAN in 2 years? Back to back, baby.
Here you go. 2 in a row, baby, right after the other. But looking at the standings, it's 2-0 for the Jade Dragons, Atlantis Leviathans, and Tartarus Titans all sitting there tied at the top. The Tartarus Titans, though, do have a 3-game set under their belt. That's why they're sitting at 3rd compared to a tied around 1st. Bolts and Kings are sitting at 4-4, and then Scarabs, Warriors, Valkyries immediately under there at that 6, 7, 8 respectively.
And remember, those top 2 spots are the ones that are the most important for this stage, because whoever is top 2 gets to then choose. So first seed chooses the second seed's group for the group stages.
Right.
Second seed chooses the first seed's group. And of course they have like a little draft style. It's very similar. In fact, I think it's the exact same thing we did in phase number 1, but that makes it all more important. Every single one of these wins, each climb forward, even just a slip up, one loss, all of a sudden, and that includes maps. Like if you just lose a single game, all of a sudden maybe your map differential comes into the equation, you get 3rd instead of 2nd, and you're finding yourself sorted by somebody else's hand.
And kind of in that phase-to-phase, in phase 1 it was kind of okay, you just know which teams you're going to throw on the opposite side immediately. This time around, this phase, it's going to be so hard. It's going to be really hard to pick some of these teams going in these groups. I mean, between how the Warriors and the Scarabs have both improved, they are no longer just that throw them in a spot. These are teams that now you have to worry about, do I really want to put these guys in my group? We still have more SPL action for you for the rest of the week, and we still have plenty more SPL action for the phase. So on behalf of all of us here on the casting team, the production, and everyone behind the scenes and at home, thank you so much for watching the SPL. We'll see you again tomorrow at 1 p.m. for more action.